happens is I let my brain wander and I come up with really cool ideas that probably aren't true, and then I shut them all down.
As far as wrestling goes, I think it would be funny to have a tortured artist trope in there too, like in charge of the PR.
Okay,
Yeah.
but Cool Jaja is just he's a bully, right? And the concept of bullies is that they
Welcome everybody to MogTalk. If you guys are unfamiliar with MogTalk, it's a show based around the Final Fantasy XIV community discussing everything from raiding to chocobo racing. And this week, we are going to be talking about lore, which I know you guys have been aching to do. The people that we have coming on the show, the people who are watching this right now, it's been a little bit. Just so you all know, this is episode 318, and it is June 21st, 2025. I like to put that in there just so it's there in the video sometimes. But before we get any further, I want to go ahead and introduce our guest who will be talking about this topic, which is going to be the Occult Crescent and the War of the Magi and everything surrounding it. Let's start with M. M, could you tell everybody who you are and your involvement with lore?
Yeah, I'm Emunarum on social media. If you are a regular MogTalk viewer, you know that I talk Frosty's ear off constantly about lore, even during raid. It's kind of my job at this point. But yeah, I do a lot of lore writing. I do a lot of lore talking. It is one of my favorite things in the community. I even do it during the world races now, which is so much fun.
That is true. That is true. Which we're not going to have to worry about too much soon, right? 7.3 isn't going to have an ultimate anymore.
The next one, I have a feeling, is the reason that we haven't gotten Seed of Sacrifice weapons yet, if they're waiting on that trial to use that as the base. The amount of Asian knowledge that I will be info dumping forcibly during the race is quite absurd. So I am very much ready for that whenever we get it. But
me too.
It won't be next patch, and I am okay with taking a bit of a nap during a patch release for once.
Yeah. All right. Crow, could you tell everybody who you are and your involvement with lore?
Fantastic. My name is Crow, also Crow Towen. I have several characters in Final Fantasy XIV, which is why I use an online name instead. But I do I do a lot of Final Fantasy XIV stuff. I've been able to just stream for it, do podcasts for it, and also was the person who suggested the spikes on the vegetarian, which made that was the first public, I guess you could say, announcement to the world that I'm obsessed with this franchise's backstory. From that point, it basically just exploded into this all kinds of stuff where I'm commentating, get to do some videos. People ask me to do videos. People, ask me questions all the time. It's been a great time though. Just the opportunity to be able to talk about the franchise with all kinds of people. I mean, literally not even 3 hours at. Oh, by the way, quick segue.
Sure.
I am at LibertyCon, the 37th LibertyCon right now. They actually asked me to come in and do a demo for the game I work on. And while I was here, I decided to ask them if it would be possible if I could do a live recording of this podcast here. And they said yes. So just to show off, that's the art.
Wow.
Yeah, this was hand painted by one of the individuals of the artist guest of honor. And then there's all kinds of people. I met Steve Jackson, who made Munchkin.
Nice.
Yeah, so while I've been working here, I did ask them if I could be on the podcast and have a space to do that, and they let me record it. So a huge shout out to them. And if you're wondering why, it's like I don't actually own this. I don't.
It looks fancier than your normal
backdrop,
setup.
Right? I'm like, this is right. I'm like, this is so clean. If you're ever wondering, it's like, no, I'm not home. I'm not. I don't own this at all. But
yeah.
But
okay.
Yeah, I've been able to, and I brought that up because I met someone here who plays Final Fantasy XIV, and he was showing me the Magic card, right? And I'm getting obsessed over the Magic cards. Why? Because the lore behind the paintings. That's it. That was it. I don't know anything about Magic. I don't know anything about the rules. I don't know anything about the game. I saw the paintings, and I was like, "Oh, I need to buy these." So that's how this whole thing started. So I'm just going around commenting on the lore, and people ask me about questions, and then I give them answers. So
Okay. Okay.
I got
Moose, could you tell everybody who you are?
Sure, I could try. Anonymoose, aka Onwell, aka Moosifer Lorengstar, aka Too Many Names. I don't know if there's anybody in this fandom that you could pretty much only come up with a description lore guy for. It would probably be me. Like, what does Moose do? I don't know. He's a guy who knows lore. He's a lore guy. Talks lore, writes lore interviews. Yes, edited 2 lore books. But mostly I'm just a guy who knows lore.
You can't casually. I'm never going to let you casually pass over that. By the way, every time you bring it up casually, I'm going to stop you so I can tell everybody for the second. Continuous and emphasis. He edited 2 lore books. There you go. Now we can continue.
Yeah,
but
it can't be a big deal every time.
It's a big deal.
7th one, 8th one, 9th
Always
one.
a big deal. It doesn't stop.
Yeah, it's just like, yes, it is published, but we still get to be like, oh, the person who edited the lore books, that's awesome. Yeah, no, just walk away from that. Unfortunately, that is.
I don't know. I'm hesitant to. I never want to be that person who's like coming off as bragging. So I'm always like trying to be that person who's like, okay, like there's only so much that you can celebrate about like making sure the grammar's right and sending in notes like a little pedantic thing from 2013.
Yeah.
Are you sure this is the right language for?
You did get attacked by Koji as well.
I did. I did get punched off stage by Koji. Yeah. That is one of my favorite moments of all time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now we're past the introductions. Everybody, for some reason, who didn't know the wonderful individuals who've been on multiple Mog Talks now for multiple lore discussions. Now you know who they are. These are wonderful guests that I love having on. I know there's lots of lore people in the show, and we're probably going to have to start rotating out and getting some other people in. And I'm going to have to see who sucks the most of this show. So in this show in particular, whoever's the worst will get the boot for the next one.
All right, screw it. Remember, I edited.
I have the lore book here. I have the lore book here. I brought it to the convention. Does that give me a?
It's something. Yeah.
I'm just here today, man. I guess it's me. See y'all later.
No, Em has a very strong grasp. Just native.
You're gonna beat us on Vibe alone.
Yeah. All right. Rotate out Frosty. Yeah, that would be it. Anyways, guys, let me inform everybody who's watching to be just completely honest. I am not a lore guy. I am not a lore person. I do not have the credentials outside of doing a podcast of inviting people on to talk about lore. I am curious and I love hearing about lore. I love knowing more, but I love talking about it and absorbing the information that way. And that's why I have these shows. And so I'm going to ask stupid stuff. I'm going to say stupid stuff. And it might seem elementary to some people who are in the community with lore and story. And I apologize. But I will be enjoying myself one way or another. I will also like to mention this, as we have had in our previous shows. Sometimes our guests aren't right. Sometimes they're speaking to the best of their knowledge. There's a lot of speculation that happens when you get it deep into lore and a lot of other things. And we'll do our best to make that clear. Speculation versus likely fact. Opinion versus fact. We'll do our best. But just know, if you read the show or listen to it later and you're like, I hate this. He lied. He said the wrong thing. He's a he's messing up the entire scene by spewing this nonsense. Guys, welcome to the talking about lore. You're just not everybody is going to agree on everything, and that's what makes it fun. Right. Okay?
How dare you put humans on your show?
And the other thing specifically with what we're going to be talking about today is we will get into almost immediately is so much of the history behind the War of the Magi and leading into Occult Crescent is also cobbled together from content that was not intended to be expanded upon and has changed a lot. who's to say they might not do that again? And also, we're still in like early patches as far as content for the Occult Crescent. So there's a lot of questions that we still have. So a lot of my speculation is, if this is true, what does that mean for X? Just a lot of like looking ahead when it comes to this stuff as well.
And
That
our
feels
guest,
like a-
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. That feels like a good springboard to warn people about how I use the word retcon, just in case I use it anywhere in this particular podcast. I use the word retcon differently than a lot of people. A lot of people use it explicitly for and solely for what I call a subtraction retcon, where you go, that didn't happen, pretend that didn't happen. When there's like something in the story that you just remove from the story, you subtract it from the story. I also use the word retcon for what I call addition retcons, which is where you build new story around the old story. Even though it wasn't what you intended at the time, you build new story to reframe it in a new way that you intend now, even if it wasn't what you intended before, without creating a contradiction. Because the Final Fantasy team hates subtraction retcons every bit as much as you do. And the process of doing addition retcons and writing your way out of it, that's just good writing. But it still is continuity that's added to the game retroactively. So you will sometimes hear me use that word, and just try not to hate on me for using it like a little broader than you're used to, maybe.
Yeah. I can vouch for Moose on that concept, because he's the one that taught additive retcons to me, first of all. And then I officially can tell everybody I've used an additive retcon in writing, and it worked. It actually worked with my current job.
Intended all along.
Like, whoa, yeah, no, everybody it worked. So yeah, no, you should totally use them, and and enjoy them, because they actually do tell the story. Really good story. So.
And I also, one more warning label before we jump into it. Our guests are allowed to have emotion-filled opinions about things and be biased and whatever else, because this is just a casual fun show. All right.
Well, that's exciting.
So I just want you guys to know.
Wait, now am I on the?
Well, see, Frosty was telling us to be nice to chat, but I think he's the one who's
just during the mic check.
Okay.
That was just a mic check. All right.
Okay, so nice during the mic check, and then you can give the rules after the fact. I understand.
Yeah,
that's the retcon, right? In action, that's another retcon.
Okay, here we go.
Rules, and retroactively, you're seeing the change. Wow.
Yeah.
Good job. That was a perfect use.
Perfect use. Yeah. All right. So let's jump into this, though. And Moose had an idea about, and the whole reason we're doing the show is because the Occult Crescent came out, and there's a lot of stuff that was in Occult Crescent that allows us to either expand on thoughts and theory crafting with story, or just factually adding to the story, retcon additionally the story. And so we're going to jump into a lot of that. But Moose had an idea that was pretty good. It's just talking about the War of the Magi and everything that's kind of related to this content, how it was introduced to the game, and just going in that timeline instead of the timeline of events as they are now, which I think would be great because it talks a little bit about Square Enix's storytelling. So, Moose, do you want to kick us off with how we're even introduced to the concept of the War of the Magi?
Yeah, actually, it believe it or not, one of the things that goes all the way back to 1.0. One thing I should note before we even get into the War of the Magi is that the cycle of the calamities was decided as part of the original story. When you logged in on day one in the game, you could check the Dusty Tomes, and it would tell you the kind of the order of the calamities. And so it was always going to be the 5th was ice, the 6th was water. That was always going to happen. War of the Magi is working around that. That's just one little piece of context. But this all goes back to job lore. War of the Magi started because Final Fantasy 14 didn't have jobs, and people were like, this doesn't feel like Final Fantasy. So they're like, all right, we're going to add the jobs. And most of the jobs had lore that it was a very easy transition for them. You know, you make up something, 500 years ago we did this, 500 years ago we started doing that. But they ran into a problem with the mages because they tried to reinvent the wheel. So we had Conjurer, which was offense-based and master of the elements mostly. And their guild was the harmony with nature, love, and light one. So you have the offense master of the elements and the love and light harmony with nature already inspired by Shinto guild. So that should probably be the one that's a healer and dresses like a shrine maiden. So it's already kind of like a little backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Thaumaturge, who was a more support-based role, and it was master of the polarities in life and death. And their guild was the Wealth and Sin Guild that was run at the funeral home. So, like, probably that one should be the hot topic job, or what passed one before Dark Knight.
I'm just catching strays everywhere right now.
Okay. I must make fun of myself as a goth alumnus. Like, I literally made like a mock topic logo.
No, well, okay. Real quick though, I do have to give you benefit of the doubt because I don't know if you've seen My Chemical Romance's top charts right now this week.
No.
Serious. I'm so serious.
Moose's plans after the show have just been decided.
The official Rock and Metal chart. I'm assuming it's last week now because we're moving forward into the next week. But last week's #1 hit was 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge.
Did something happen, or did
they
my
just
buying
launched
a new copy
it was
every
an
week finally
anniversary
pay
album.
off?
It was an anniversary album they launched, but they got so
awesome.
many sales it punched them up to #1.
This is a perfect week for Mhach.
My Chemical Romance is #1 this week.
Mhach Talk got me.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god, back on track.
Back on track.
I rambled too much anyway. Throw on Helena.
Okay.
Let's see. All right. So anyway, the White Mage and the Black Mage lore needed to be like a little deeper and a little further back to explain why they were so different and how we got where we got. So they came up with a really creative solution. They were banned like 1,500 years ago. We just decided those aren't things anymore. We're never going to talk about them again. So over 1,500 years, shit happens, things change, and we've lost touch with those things. So as we're getting them back, maybe it doesn't look quite like you would expect, and it actually worked. It worked really well. So the Black Mage quest in 1.0, we're introducing Shatto, Death's Handmaiden, She-Devil, who invented black magic and called down a falling star because she could. And, that led to a story about black magic and void scent and hubris and how, maybe some things are banned for a good reason.
Is this Shatto Final Fantasy 11 reference?
No.
Oh, okay.
They changed her name.
They drop the N from her name so that you can be sure. So 11 is Shamtoto.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. What is funny about it though is it is very similar to how they, when Ardbert and the Warriors of Darkness first the source, their idea of being disguised is also dropping a letter from the name, which I have to assume is kind of a reference to this. What does make it funny, though, is that the only thing stopping Shantoto at 11 from taking over the world is the fact that she lives in it. There's an expansion where she gets teleported to another reality and immediately starts world domination. Because that's what she does. And then she comes back and she's like, oh, I don't care about this in my own reality. So there are some design elements that are like, oh yeah, she'll just go and possess people and do things because she can. Otherwise, she's just bored.
Okay.
So, same kind of deal.
In 11, Shantoto rhymes every line. And you actually, spoiler alert, you actually get to meet Shantoto for a brief moment in 14.
Yeah, wasn't it a crossover game?
No, you actually get to meet like Shattoto, the meteor creator. If you do the Black Mage quest,
the job quest.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And in the quest, they set up a rhyme line, and then she just stops herself and goes, "Did I almost rhyme? Like, who would do that?"
That's totally not me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
So 1.0 White Mage storyline introduces the Age of Endless Frost and the 5th Astral Era. Now, I know that sounds normal now. But back then, we were told that the Elezen believed 1,500 years ago was the beginning of time when the 12 were like, here you go, Eorzea, it's yours. So to be talking about a previous era was like, oh my God, this is so special. So we were like, wrapped by this. You have the rediscovery of magic after the Age of Endless Frost finally helps them emerge from the Ice Age. And it leads to an astral era of prosperity and cooperation and friendly competition until it wasn't. And there was a mage war, and it was an unsustainable burden on the ether. And then a calamity was caused by the elementals because they were so enraged and wrathful about the mage war and the abuse of the ether. Now, this is where it gets a little weird in 1.0, is you actually talk to the elementals and they back up this story. They tell you that was true. And you actually meet the elemental of wrath who says she caused the calamity. And she's like, yeah, I did it. And look around, look at what's going on. I'll fucking do it again. So the whole 1.0 story is you're trying to convince the elementals not to keen again, not to cause another calamity. But back then, a calamity was on the horizon, so that story made sense. That story ends up getting completely changed by 1.0.
Okay. I don't feel like I've completely kept up.
Or 2.0, sorry.
I'm doing my best.
See, and the funny thing is, when that told, because Moose said, we should go over it chronologically. I don't know anything from 1.0. A lot of this stuff that he's saying, he's told me in DMs, we've reviewed and research, and it's I don't have the cognitive awareness of it, but I'm still yeah, no, they did all this back then in 2010. What? And yeah, it's pretty crazy. So
2010 to 2012, we got the bare basics of it. Yep. The invention of black magic, so Shatto, cool. The Mage War. It didn't have a name yet. The Mage War didn't have a name yet. But we knew that there was a war, that it created an unsustainable burden on the ether, and that a massive flood calamity happened afterwards. And the fact that the elementals got blamed for it might never come up again. So it's okay if you forget that part.
Okay.
And that's also one of those things where they largely did end up retaining that for the canon of the game as we understand it today, because it is still the fourth Astral Era was where everyone was burning books and wiping knowledge, led to the Age of Frost, and then arcane discovery is what kind of brought us into the fifth Astral Era, which was wiped away by a giant flood. It's less explicit in this specific elemental is the one who's taking credit for it, but it is still our understanding is the imbalance in the ether is what a calamity is, but it was still literally wiped away. And this is also kind of the era that laid the foundation for the grand companies came out of this, and the following era, recovering from this calamity caused by the War of the Magi, we start seeing migration to Eorzea. We start seeing the roots of Garlemald start sprouting up. So that is kind of where our story starts.
So are we talking about the same little elementals, or a little orb, and there's little tiny orbs around them, or are these okay? So these are the so
we're talking the fairy ones. We're talking the fairy.
Literally,
ones.
Those guys, get angry and kill a whole bunch of mages.
Sprite. Okay, so in 1.0, the winged elementals were everywhere, and sprites didn't exist.
The winged elementals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the winged elementals were all
Eureka?
Over the world.
Yeah.
Did you play Eureka? Those elementals, the buffs, the people you run up to and they're singing, and you stand next to them and they give you a buff.
Yeah,
those models were used in 1.0 for the elementals of Gridania. That's where they come from, that visage. Yeah.
If you, I think in retrospect, if you just assume that the elementals are sentient ether, from their perspective, a mage war that drained the land, of course that would feel like being shackled and abused, right?
And that is probably
you're destroying
the best
me,
way
my flesh.
It is probably the best way to describe an elemental as well, in terms of it's sentient ether. Sometimes it's aspected.
I mean, technically, we're
sentient.
We're sentient ether too, right? In a way,
we have souls that makes us alive in a different way. We're not here to discuss ether physics. That's a whole other show. Save it for the next one.
Okay. Frosty starts the show with I'm not going to get deep here. And then I'm talking about elementals as sentient ether, and you're like, who isn't?
How does ethereal work? I don't.
Okay, all right. So is that all 1.0, kind of what we knew about it and everything else? All right.
That's basically the rundown of what we got in 1.0, because Scholar didn't exist yet, which is, I think, kind of makes it doubly funny that Nim is the only nation from the 5th Astral Era that did get name dropped in 1.0. And not even in the
wild.
context of the war. It was just like,
It's
yeah,
just
there was
there.
a Nim. It was over there. Ocean. Yeah,
We called it
They
they
had
Nim
didn't say
some
because
like
it
that.
floating
sounded good.
islands. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So then a meteor dropped on the world, and they spent a year recreating the game, and then we went into
They spent a year-
2.0.
Yeah, and now, this may be a little surprising, but we get back to a Realm Reborn, and the War of the Magi is job lore.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now it's now in both stories they name it. It's called the War of the Magi now. Black Mage has not been drastically changed. I'm not going to waste time kind of going over it a second time when it's very, very similar. White Mage, Ryo Senna reintroduces the war. This time she calls Amdapor by name. She name drops Amdapor. So we know the name of one of the mage cities that was involved. And she says that the enemies of Amdapor were called the enemies of Amdapor for now. We don't get a name. We don't get a name for that. But Raya O does start integrating some of this. She says that Shatto's invention of black magic led to Amdapor's invention of white magic, and then that rebalanced the realm, and the realm flourished until it didn't. Calamity not blamed on the elementals this time. And then after the war, magics were banned. The elementals sealed Amdapor away in the 12's wood, and then from there, the white mage story focused on the wandering Pajal Atoakant, and we got away from that. And the elemental Oha Sok, the elemental of wrath, not brought up again, may never be brought up again, but on the off chance she's in this story, like for all we know, the final boss of Occult Crescent, it finally loses when Raya Osena shows up with Nirvana. Like,
okay,
That,
you said a couple
key.
words I
just
don't
Square Enix
understand.
just do
I'm
it.
gonna
That would be cool. That would be a good way to that would be another additive retcon. It'd be like,
I would accept it.
Soak. Yeah, like ends up occupying the blood towers. And oh man,
I would take it.
Sitting still chair.
Elemental returns. It's like, this is the second flood. It's like, no.
Now, when I
More
think of
blood.
Nim, I think of Tonberries.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, but
We
they're
finally-
scholars. They're not white mages.
No, they are scholars. So a Realm Reborn, this time around,
Yeah.
we do have Scholar, and that
Yeah.
means we get Nim as more than just a name drop.
Okay,
We
okay.
learned that we learned that in a Realm Reborn, we learned that it was a small city state compared to the other two, but that despite its small size, it was able to turn back the tide of invasion every time, thanks to like brave axe wielding Marines led by small numbers of fairy wielding scholar tacticians. And that's when you first see the floating city of Nim for the first time, which I want to stress was always called the floating city of Nim, but was not always floating in the air.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Just floating on water, and maybe.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was
Nice.
called the floating city
So
because
proud
it was
of you,
on the
Frosty.
lake, and it looked like it was floating on the lake. And then
Yeah.
wind crystal imbalance. Now it's floating in the air. Very funny.
Yeah.
Very good. Very clever.
It was like from a purely objective perspective, we're taking magic out of the equation from this. You're looking at city-states at war or trying to gain an edge over each other.
Mhm.
That kind of a city is just also incredibly defensible as well, which you brought up Tonberries, Frosty. The way that they inevitably had to get at Nim was by the common belief. It's not 100% certain how this item got put into the city of Nim, but it was a piece of treasure that caused a disease that turned people into Tonberries.
Yep.
My favorite piece of lore about this is that Tonberries are actually a mythical creature, but they didn't have anything else to call what they turned into, and Tonberries seemed to fit the description.
Yeah.
And so this mythical creature of a Tonberry that did not exist prior to this is what they started calling the creature that Nemeans turned into. And the way that they dealt with that, because they realized too late, was by locking them up in a tomb and burying it.
A lot of missed opportunity. Yeah. It's just,
That's the end of what we're learning
Bad
in the
choice.
Realm Reborn story. Is you actually meet a Tonberry, former Lalafell Tonberry, and he tells you that the people of Nim are now Tonberries, and there was a strange sickness that did this to them in the war. And how do they deal with this? They put them all in the palace, and then they sunk it in the lake. They quarantined them and then sunk them into the lake.
So it's not floating
and that's
anymore.
why.
No.
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 The sunken city of Nim and then the floating remains of Nim. Nothing is just straight up floating on the water anymore.
Okay. And curious derailed conversation. What in this disease of them being turned into a Tonberry makes them obsessed with knives and stabbing people in the back?
So that's the king, if I recall. Yeah. That was his rancor.
Yeah, the king is so angry about the fate of what has happened to them that they were quarantined and sunk into the lake, that his rancor, his rage over this has festered and infected all of the others over the ages.
Infectious rage. Got it. All right.
Dinosaurs reaction.
He got them all mad for him. Yeah.
He felt like he was being stabbed in the back, so he made sure everyone else would be stabbed in the back.
Would feel the same pain he did. That's what's called everyone's grudge. The Diva is everyone's grudge. Yeah.
Everyone's grudge. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
The doinked becomes the doinker.
Yep.
Very well put. Thank you so much for that.
Moose is gonna kill me by the end of this podcast, I swear. It's a very good joke, and that's why I'm frustrated.
So, all right. So, getting back to it, this is a Realm Reborn, and this is mostly with the Scholar quest line, and I'm guessing the Warrior quest line too was involved with this, if I remember right, or am I wrong?
There's a brief Marauder
Warrior
cameo,
is mostly
but Warrior
like...
does its own thing.
Okay,
Warrior does its own
rocks.
thing. Warrior has its own Berserker storyline with the guy from the Far Reach.
That's right.
Curious Gorge. Great
Curious
name.
Gorge.
That's a great name.
Great name.
All right. So
no, it.
Good.
Okay,
I was gonna say, do we finish up a Realm Reborn here, and that's pretty much it? It was just a Scholar quest line.
Almost. We're very close. Close. So the Scholar job quests actually lead into your first set of level cap dungeons in a Realm Reborn, because I guess SE is, this is where they're starting to realize, the War of the Magi lore is getting a little deeper and cooler than the job lore, we use to justify it. Let's do some stuff with it. So you go into the Wanderer's Palace, you storm in and you take out the rancorous Tonberries, not the happy ending your Lullaberry friend was hoping for, but can't be helped now. And then off to Amdapor Keep. You actually get to go to one of the frontline war bastions of Amdapor that was cloaked in the forest. The ruins of it were cloaked in the forest until the calamity. And our old friends, the Lambs of Dalamud, are being conned by void scent that are left over from the destruction of the city, basically. Now, what's really interesting about this to me is that you're introduced to Amdapor first. You're introduced to the White Mage City first. And they are not introduced as good guys. They are introduced as a city whose hubris was their downfall. So we are saving the natural villains of the story for last. We're not even talking about them. And we're actually talking about, this horrible plague that destroyed Nim and the hubris of Amdapor and how that was their downfall. And now their keep is filled with, ruins and void scent that was summoned by their enemies. And eventually, through A Realm Reborn, you get to the Lost City itself, and you start getting a real sense of how messed up this war was. I mean, the land is so tainted. The plants, the bugs, the animals, everything is tainted there.
That dungeon makes me want to sneeze.
Yeah. The whole dungeon is just mold.
And the music was so good, though.
The music is great.
Incredible.
The environment's nasty.
Incredibly misleading, because you're like, oh, this is so nice. And then you're running through it, and you're like, this is pestilence made manifest.
Right. And this ends in Diablos, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. So, I'm trying to...
Yeah, he was like head void sent in charge of the last assault on Amdapor. We will get back to him.
Okay.
But for now, you find out that Diabolus is actually still there, and you try to take him out, but he turns into a bat and escapes. So A Realm Reborn ends with it looking like, for now, Nim and Amdapor are wrapped up, and we don't even know who the Black Mages are. They still have no name. And as a goth alumnus, I'm like mad at this point in the story. Like this is the only city I want to hear about, and it's the only one they're not talking about. But Yeah, aside from that, that's about all Realm Reborn has to say on it. The relics give a shout out to a book owned by a savior of Nim and a rod stolen from a void sent queen named Lilith. We eventually find out the Eternal Bonding Chapel, the Sanctum of the 12, was built in the early 5th Astral Era when all the magic cities were kind of still getting along, and that we only recently found and restored it, but mostly we get away from it for a bit.
You know, I appreciate this so much because it's starting to jog my memory with all the stuff that I did over a decade ago and actually paid attention to it.
Older content.
It really gives you a sense of how much this has been pieced together over time, bit by bit by bit.
I mean, even if I get it in a roulette now, I don't think about the content. I'm just blasting through it. So it's good to kind of re-jog my memory on this a good bit. And, okay. But then in Heaven's Ward, it got crazy, right?
Ew.
Yeah, and...
Real quick, though.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Moose was talking about how the Amdapori were depicted as villains, right? I just want to read real quick the dungeon description of Lost City of Amdapor, because every time I read it, it blows my mind. Because context, right? We see visuals, we think things. So in your mind, I want you to picture White Mage, and when you think White Mage, you think the blood lilies and the shine colors and the brightness, and they're there, healing people and saving them. Now, see, this is the dungeon description of Lost City of Amdapor. Mind you, the patch 2.21. Born in magic, the ancient city of Amdapor lived in splendor and died in agony. As the 5th Astral Era gave way to the 6th Umbral and the ensuing catastrophe, the ancient of Amdapor's destruction slept. Now the seal that has held so long is softening, like wind-fallen fruit, and what blind worms writhe underneath the skin of the dead city. Like, that is not White Mage core at all. What the? What do you... These are the people who invented white magic?
And it's necromancy, right? It's Yeah,
and once we get into the Heaven's Ward stuff, we actually get to learn more about that. So, yeah, it's a good lead. I like that.
Okay, yeah, I don't know anything. I'm just taking your wonderful poem and trying to make sense out of it in my head.
It's really interesting how deep these characters, like the different civilizations, go into and how they get into it.
Okay.
But yeah, Amdapor is not great.
Yeah, this is really a cool part of the story, is that this is one of the places where you have a natural good guy and a natural bad guy, right? And even though the story is never going to fully subvert that, Mhach is always going to be the evil empire trope of this era. They're never going to let it be that simple. There's always going to be some kind of context to it, that Amdapor had their own problems and not everyone in Mhach sucked. But we'll get to that in a minute.
And just to be clear, we were talking a little bit about the pronunciation of Mhach. Could we?
I'm going to say all three, just so no one can pin me down on any of them.
That was my plan, also.
Okay, Mhach, and Mhach. Mhach. Okay, got it.
Mhach.
I was paying attention.
I completely agree with M that if you look at it and you kind of analyze the linguistics of it, it really looks like it should be Mhach. And everyone yells at me when I say
does
that.
Not. Yeah.
Most people just say Mhach. I say Mhach because I went into the Japanese side and looked at the katakana because I was very lost, and it was Maha. And I was like, okay, so I should try to put a little bit of a in there, right?
We're still talking about the same thing. We're not talking about different Mhach eras or what have you.
It's just this is a linguistic
trying to
construction behind the word. The whole different type of lore, but
right. Okay.
Thinking about
so I'm just
I didn't think.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to use all three versions of the word just so no one person can be...
Well, everybody will call you wrong at the same time, too. So everybody's going to say you're right, and everybody's going to say you're wrong.
That's okay.
Yeah. So, okay.
We're going to start the next War of the Magi over how to say this word. That's the cause of the war.
Most of my opinions are me setting up my camp in the valley between two hills people are willing to die on and just getting shelled from both sides. This is nothing new for me.
Damn.
Okay. All right.
I'm stealing that.
Real quick, go ahead. Crow.
Someone in chat is saying it's Irish.
Yeah.
The word Mhach is Irish, so that might actually be a little helpful.
What would the pronunciation like? I've always wondered that.
Irish
like,
goes crazy. I'm not even going to try.
There's a
It would
lot
be
of
closer to
Irish. There is a lot of Irish in the Mhach lore.
All right,
but
I remember
I don't know how the
yeah.
Irish would pronounce that.
We're close to can of worms, so we can get to some other ones too.
You can be proud when we get to Ketshi in a few minutes, but right now.
Okay. So, all right, Em, is there anything else you wanted to add with what we've talked about so far before we go into?
We're trying to emphasize.
Yeah.
There's an ant in my room. While we were trying to emphasize the, gray morality of Amdapor here. Do we want to talk about the power structure that led up to the War of the Magi, or do we want to hold off on that yet? Because there was a catalyst for Mhach starting their research in order to gain power in the first place.
Did we learn that in Heaven's Word?
I don't know. I'm sorry I played this game for the first time in 2021. My bad, but I'm not as old as all of you.
I talk to people about this all the time. Like, your perspective on the game is always going to be your own unique perspective on the game because you're the only one who played it at that pace, in that order, in that way. And like, so much of this game hits different if you play it in a different way. So when you're talking about something that inspired something, give me like a hint. Give me like a one or two word hint.
So we can see where it falls in the timeline.
It's like geopolitical circumstances that led to the dwindling of the city-states.
Oh, that's lore book.
Yeah, that's why I'm like...
Book? Okay, so that's 2016. You're almost... We are currently in 2014.
Sorry,
we are heading in there.
I mainlined MSQ, then I mainlined all of the rest of the content, and then I mainlined job quests. So that's the order I experienced all of this in, is backwards, basically.
Yeah, Lorebook opened a lot of doors, but not
anytime someone
Anytime
someone tells me that they're hesitant to make a video about like their opinions of the game, I'm like, don't be. Like, you're the only one with this opinion.
You're the only one that knows this. Yeah, you perceived it this way.
Mm-hmm. Y'all were talking about me being vibe-based. The problem is my memory is eidetic. So all of this information is just in my brain, and I have it. Don't tell me where it came from. It's just there. So anyway, let's keep experiencing this game in the order that it came out.
Yeah.
We're still about
remember where I got the information better than the information. That's my problem.
We're the exact opposite.
I have to go back and relearn it from the place I remember where it is. Anyway, all right, Heaven's Word.
Yeah.
Now, a shocking twist. We get our first Lore of the Magi dump in Heaven's Word. Job lore. Scholar quest this time. Just the scholar quest this time. It's okay. We go back to Nim. We learn from our Tonberry friend how this sickness actually started. So there was a group of merchants who were on the seas and they got caught in a storm and they were rescued by Nim. And they were so grateful for being rescued by Nim that they gifted them with this beautiful amphora, this piece of pottery, this beautiful piece of pottery, very ornate. And then everyone started getting sick. And as you're hearing this story, you and Akasoka are like, hey, wait a minute. Did the merchants get sick? This sounds fishy. So you're able to find the amphora. It's still there. Like, thank God for plot points. It has survived all of the ages, and you are able to find the amphora, and you bring it back to the Tonberry, who realizes that there is a void scent binding sigil on the bottom of the amphora. And this is where he realizes it was Mhach. And my little black heart skips a beat because we finally got a name. Heaven's Word. This lore has existed to justify Black Mage's existence since 1.0. Well, like 1.12? We do not get Mhach's name until mid-Heaven's Word job quest.
Well, I mean, that's still a long time ago now at this point.
So I have a question about that. Since we're talking about timelines of things being released, Had they already announced what the Alliance raids for Heavensward were going to be prior to this?
I can't
Because
remember.
I'm curious if we were like,
It was in the live letters. I do remember
and
it
then
was
you
live
find
letters.
out that it's Mhach, or if it's like, oh, this was kind of a surprise, and now we have even more of it.
If I remember correctly. Oh, you remember?
I remember my exposure to it. I'm going to give you my experience.
Yeah, no,
when we were in the Sea of Clouds, there was a tiny little dot, a red dot,
Yeah,
a
yes.
red ship or something.
Yes.
The UFO.
And then it just started getting bigger and closer, I think, sort of like the Alda meteor did. And then it became an alliance. So that was my exposure to it. I didn't watch a lot of the live letters and stuff at that point, I think, to know. We could, if you really, really want to, we can go back to a MogTalk around the time this stuff was coming out, and I bet you we talk about it.
My memory is aligning with yours. I remember not having any information until after the thing in the Sea of Clouds popped up, because I remember we noticed there was something flying around in the Sea of Clouds, and at this point, the only mention of Mhach had been the scholar jobs, and it was a very passing reference, right? And it had nothing to do with the Heavensward zones. And I was like, wow, I wonder what that thing in the clouds could be. And I remember seeing one person who was so sure, they were just like, Mhach.
Oh,
I was like, how could you say that? How could you be sure? Like, it's one purple dot in the middle of nowhere after we've and then it's like, all right, we're going to announce the Alliance raid. And it comes up and it's a very clear picture of the ship, which is purple and black and shaped like a coffin. I'm like, mother.
That's fun.
I just remember being like, how can you be so sure? Like, how can you be that confident? And they did it.
Sometimes you just have a feeling. Yeah, sometimes you just know.
Make it till you make it.
I mean, sometimes you're right accidentally, but I mean, they did. They sniped that one.
Yeah, those were fun days, and I didn't care so much for like the sky pirate stuff that was involved, and not the creepy cat. I'm gonna say that, and a lot of people are gonna get angry. The cat, was involved. Cat Sif.
Cat
Sheep. Okay. And then I thought that was kind of weird, but then you get into a demon spaceship, and you're like, oh, hey, that's kind of cool. This reminds me of Event Horizon a little bit. But then, like, I think I remember a lot of fond memories with that alliance in particular. But anyways, continue yours, Muse. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm actually right on board with that, because as again, Goth alumnus who was very upset that the Black Mage City kept getting snubbed, all of a sudden we found out that we got the name because there's going to be a whole ass Alliance raid, and the introduction to it is there's a super extra black and purple coffin ship autopiloting around the Sea of Clouds, and you're going to team up with the Sky Pirates to go check it out, and you break in the front door and find out it was designed by H.R. Giger, and Diabolos is back. Like, I am just racking up win after win after win. Like, everything's coming up, Moose. Right. The intro, the Mhach story was so good.
Mm-hmm.
It really was.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too.
So what do we learn? What do we learn from the Shadow of Mhach? But let's keep it relevant to the war. We learn High Void Mage Kesser was they only summoned Diabolos as a deterrent, as a bluff. And when she spoke out against using Diabolos for those means, they put her under house arrest and used him to sack Amdapor and moved on to darker things. About as messed up as you would expect for a late Astral Era empire, probably being guided by Selk somehow. Like, people drinking void scent blood. They got a man-made black hole that's supposed to be like a failsafe for a void scent uprising, but they're like eating enemy cities with it. This got dark quick.
It was wild.
Okay.
It was wild.
Okay.
It literally opened the floodgates of potential, because it was not just like... I can't stress enough how at this point we know that the 5th Astral Era, it was like a reawakening of arcane magic in general, like a lot of knowledge being like refound and like discovered for the first time. And on top of that, we're now also dealing with summoning void set and all of this other crap. So if you start putting the two together, you're going to start getting into the darker territory of what all of this magical science, for lack of a better term, is capable of.
Okay.
And you find. Oh, was there a question there?
No, keep going.
Oh, okay.
I'm just trying to keep up. I'm trying to keep up. Go.
You find out that while on house arrest, Kessler actually was able to intuit that the flood was coming. The flood was predicted. And the leaders of the coven actually had the gall to come back to Kessler and be like, so here's what you're going to do. We're going to get a whole bunch of void sent. We're going to trap them into coffins, and it's going to power our getaway ship. But you're going to need to handle a lot of that. You're going to need to do a lot of the lifting there, which to her credit, she did. She tried to do. She tried to get everybody into the ship. They imprisoned a void sent queen named Skahach, and they were going to fly off to their floating city and be, happily ever after. And nope, they all died.
Literally, yeah.
Void Sent got out, they all died.
The Void Sent just killed them all on the ship, and it's just a dead spaceship. Because of
if you break down like the...
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to bring back the sci-fi analogy you had of Event Horizon, Frosty, right? Imagine you're on a ship, and suddenly something that you brought on the ship that you know is dangerous, that has the capacity to power said ship, is now loose and is actively hunting you for not just sustenance, but also sport. Like, imagine if there was
revenge.
They're revenge.
Off.
Imagine if there was a nuke that was alive and you were like, yeah, we're just going to lightly restrain it.
Me.
Exactly. Like, where do you go from there?
I can't stress enough that most of the info that Mhach got on Void Sent came from Void Sent.
They traded telling the truth about their weaknesses and all of that.
Right. They traded blood and vessels and ether and summoning packs, and they tried to make very well worded contracts that would prevent the Void Sent from doing anything unwanted or unexpected. And they had a weapon, the Null Stone, that would obliterate their essence if they didn't, listen. But still, they're Void Sent. They're sneaky. So if you want to read into it, like, the implication is kind of that the binding magics that they got for the queen were deliberately flawed from the start.
Okay.
Big one, yeah.
You got all that, Frosty?
I think I got it.
That's okay, because
summary at the end of the show.
Yeah.
No, actually, we are getting to a summary, because this part of it is going to end at the Encyclopedia Eorzea 1, which is the first time they summarized and expanded all of it.
Saying we should try to get Frosty to summarize this entire episode.
Sure.
At the end of the show.
All right. So, did we learn anything else that we that's been added to the story past what we just talked about? Or did it pretty much stop there for Heavensward?
For Heavensward, pretty much it as far as the War of the Magi goes. I want to bring it up just because it's funny, but go ahead, Crow.
Lost City of Amdapor hard mode was a really interesting reveal, because I don't know if you remember the situation with that was we've cleared out the city, and so the hearers and they're going to basically, they have, I think it's called the Quieting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a ritual process in which they all get together and basically, all right, Forrest, take it. We're done with it. We don't want.
I don't remember, so I'm gonna say you're right. Correct.
Yeah, there is a ritual in which the Pajal and the hearers all get together, and they have to basically consecrate the land back to the forest. The elementals can repopulate the area, and it'll be safe for them. So they go and do this, right? They're like, all right, they're preparing everything, and before they even get started, the elementals bounce. They're like, we don't want to be here anymore. And it's like, but we killed the demon thing that was there. What else is here? And you basically get called. That's the Warrior of Light's job. Hey, so we can't do this, so you have to do it. That's the entire premise of the game. So they ask you to go into the Lost City of Amdapor and figure out why the elementals would just bolt. So what was scaring them so bad? And what I thought was so interesting, that it wasn't Void Sent that was scaring them. It was a golem. There was a stone construct at the bottom of the Lost City of Amdapor that terrified the elemental. And so again, that brings into the context of, the Amdapor weren't great to the point where what would cause a golem? Because we've seen golems all the time. You got the big rough rock ones, the Belladine ones. You got the Egyptian-looking ones. What about that one at the very bottom of Velocity Amdapor? That's so terrifying. It's so scary. It would freak the elementals out on sight. And it's just I've had all kinds of theories, but then I mean we can get into all sorts of stuff. Why? Because one, it looks like a Sin Eater, right? It's got a straight there's some weird connection between Amdapor and
I thought for sure I was gonna get away with not mentioning it.
No, but here's the problem. We have to mention it. Why? Why do you have to mention it? Because they have the picture of the statue in the lore book and just casually mentioning it. Oh, it's based on a transcendent being, and you're like,
I love Amdapor. This is my favorite topic. I'm barely restraining myself here. I love Amdapor.
I want to give you the floor after I finish my reveal because that was the thing. Honestly,
I'm waiting for you all to let me loose. So
the thing that got me was genuinely the fact that the elementals were terrified of the stone statue, and it's just there's so much to it. They put so much into this. The stone statue is able to use a reverse spell. You know what reverse is in Final Fantasy? You're using healing magic, but you're reversing the heal. You purposely are wielding the magics of healing with the intent to do exact opposite effect. And this statue was casting that on you constantly, and you're just like, what? What did you guys do? What were you able to achieve with your magic? But for the most part, right, we ended up learning the white mages are a lot more devastating and scary than we really put them up. Because every once in a while, you start thinking, oh, they're just healers. The elementals are
Raiders would also tell you otherwise. The most dangerous thing while raiding is not the boss; it's the white mage in your party.
Hey, Amdapor Secrets. They gotta maintain that vibe.
Yeah,
letting you drop into the red just to remind you need me.
Okay. Oh, yep. But yes, go ahead and because that for me, Velocity of Amdapor was such a big deal because there were so many little things they're really pointing out. Guys, we did show you the black mages were dangerous and they did this really awful thing, but there were other nations that did all those other awful things too. And then we have this thing where we're just to this day we still don't know the connection between the Sin Eaters and the Amdapori. So
right, the statue drove me nuts for a while.
They haven't answered because it's just this casual thing that's just out there.
I don't like to make leaps. I don't like leaps I don't like making leaps on my own.
Right.
Okay, so here's the thing. When I look at a piece of lore that there seems to be a hole in, and I go, that's weird. I can't explain that. What happens is that inevitably 500 people line up to go, I can explain it. And I'm like, no, you can make stuff up. You can make stuff up. I can make stuff up too. I'm not saying I can't make stuff up. I'm saying that I don't know how to explain it. And those are different. I can also do their job for them and come up with a great excuse, but it could be contradicted tomorrow if they write something. So that's why I get very nervous. I don't want to make the assumption that anyone at any time can stuff you full of light and you'll become a Sin Eater. I don't want to make that assumption that there's no other context involved, because that leads the question of well, how hasn't this happened more? But I mean, if you get into Shadowbringers and Endwalker, and you look at some of the stuff that happened in Shadowbringers and Endwalker, it becomes a little more realistic that maybe, this is just what happens when you stuff someone full of light.
I have a theory, and I will explain it, that I will make it incredibly clear when we get there that it is a theory. Because my explanation, the way that I kind of conceptualize it in my head at the moment, actually has nothing to do with light, which is why I kind of take that route instead. And it's in line with what we know about Amdapor's abilities.
Okay. Did you want to dive in real quick on it?
Am I allowed to? I wasn't sure where we are on the... Moose, tell me where we're at in terms of can I talk about...
Or should we wait on that?
We're at a perfectly good spot. We're at a perfectly good spot, and from here, the lore book is going to summarize it, and we're going to get a couple references after that. But we are done with the building of the War of the Magi lore. So there's if we're going till 45 minutes from now, there's plenty of time.
We're going until people have to leave, And so let's just.
This is a big topic. This is like
Yeah.
It is very important that everyone's
Yeah.
listening. We're not going to be able to cover everything. Like the War of the Magi context has been ongoing since 2010. So we're looking at, 15 years of information. It's it's
A lot more than it feels like.
It really
Okay.
is, yeah. Right?
All right, go ahead and put your theory out there. Okay.
Well, we need actual context first.
Okay.
Oh.
So
Okay, so we got to get to
a little bit, yeah.
All right.
And this is not theory yet. This is stuff that we know. I'll
Okay.
make it clear when I start speculating a little bit.
okay.
So, for context of why this kind of power scaling towards the War of the Magi started in the first place is that in the 5th Astral Era, there were actually a plethora of city-states. It wasn't just Nim, Mhach, and Amdapor. And some of them faded out over time, some of them kind of combined together, some of them started being like a little bit more isolated for one reason or another. That's the nature of civilization, should change and grow. Amdapor was actually the strongest and largest of the cities for a very long period of time. And while nothing was hostile yet, that is kind of the catalyst for Mhach being like, oh, we kind of need some way to deal with this. Because when you have one superpower and everyone else is kind of a little bit below, I think there were, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 prominent city-states at this time.
That's coming in the lore book section. But
Yeah.
we'll say yes.
Okay. All context for that. So Mhach starts power scaling, and then Amdapor is like, oh shit, we got to do something about this too. So before outright war breaks out, they start, experimenting with their magic in their own way. What's important to know, though, is when the city was founded as Amdapor, they had actually asked the elementals very politely, hey, can we use your land? Can we use your ether? And they said, no, thank you. And Amdapor said, great, we respect that. We'll settle outside of the shroud for the most part. And that was fine. At some point, clearly, because we've talked about the dungeons, that stopped being the case. But the elementals took a look at the Amdapori and were like, no, we're good. Thank you very much. We're politely setting up this boundary. So when Amdapor starts power scaling, they don't summon Void Scent. They start tunneling further into what their white magic can do, and they start... Excuse me. That's why I have water.
That's okay.
They start building statues. They start building massive stone statues. And not all of them are the same. So we're talking about the ones that look like Sin Eaters, right? Because there's the lion, and we've got our giant lady with the sword, our angel-looking creature. But we also have stuff like the demon wall cubes. That's not really a demon, that's not a void scent, that's also a golem. That's been imbued with
Sunken.
this magic. Right. Yeah. All this to say, this is something that has been carved and then imbued with life, which is fundamentally different from what Sin Eaters are, because we've seen that transformation in game. That is a person becoming so corrupt by an overabundance of ether that they fully transform. And this is where my theory comes in on this, right? My theory is that it's not just ether that's being drawn upon for that transformation. It's the actual soul itself that gets used for a catalyst of it, right? Because all of Shadowbringers, you're taking all of this light ether, but it could just as well have been any other type of ether, and it starts cracking your soul into pieces. It's not just your physical form, it's like the essence of your being that's being impacted.
Right. Because Feul was talking about it too.
Yeah, and Y'shtola talks about it, and that's why, the pivotal moment of Shadowbringers, you perform a mini rejoining with Ardbert, and your soul kind of gets a band-aid on it. That's all canonical, right?
Okay,
So we're talking about white magic that is intended to be used for healing being reversed, literally reversed. We're talking about all of these contradictions of magic. I don't think it was maybe just ether that the Amdapori were using, because that they had a hard line against like corrupting the ether of the land. We know that from the 1.0 lore as well, right? And that kind of carried over. But the fact that they lived in harmony and suddenly didn't, coupled with the way that these statues come to life, I don't think it was entirely etherical. I think something else had to be a part of it. Can I tell you for certain? Yeah, they've put souls into these statues. I absolutely cannot do that, but I think that it's along the same kind of science, because it's the exact same thing that we're seeing in Dawn Trail right now. What are robots if not metal statues, viewed with soul power? Could have been doing the same thing.
Well, so the statues would need a soul stone anyway.
Yeah.
So you're pouring some kind of spiritual energy into them in the first place.
Exactly. Yep. So
like,
that's my theory. It's not just light aspect, right? You could technically do it with anything. Yeah, it's the soul itself aspect of it. Not the fact
I thought aether and souls were the same thing. Wait a minute. No,
we talked about
souls are aether, but aether aren't souls.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure. All right. Cool. All right. Cool. No.
All squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles.
Yeah.
I would be so lost without you, Moose. Yeah. So
square rectangle metaphor is great.
Yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that. That's the only aspect of that that's speculation, but like my specialty when it comes to lore stuff is ether physics and breaking it down in terms of like real life circumstances. That's where I fall on that. I would love to learn more, but right now that's my best guess with current evidence of how it works. Did I phrase that amicably enough for you?
Yes. Yeah. No, the great thing about this kind of speculation is that I have learned over time that there are actually two approaches that might get used when it comes time to expand this lore. There's the precedent approach where someone goes, okay, here's all the stuff we said. What's the explanation that fits great with everything we said? The parsimonious Occam's razor, what fits with everything we said so far? How do we lock that in? And that's how I think. That's what I always assume is going to happen. But I'm wrong. Because the other half of the time, what happens is someone comes in and goes, what do I want to write that's going to be real cool and doesn't contradict that? And how can I get away with it? And the thing that they think of is often the same really cool thing that, you know, a huge group of other fans who are playing this game thought of because it's the cool thing to do. Like, why would you not do that if you could?
The way I like to think about it is what would be the most narratively satisfying? Because excuse me.
And that should be the goal.
Excuse me, I talk too much. Y'all have to get me to shut up. When I lore, it's a very rare kind of person who will read lore like a textbook and be like, yeah, this is great. A lot of us are on this call right now. And I am also one of those people, but when I'm talking about like applied lore and speculation, I'm not just thinking about like, oh, here's where we could go. I think about things that would be narratively satisfying to expand upon. What, if you're gonna retcon something, especially if you're going to add something retroactively, which is what we're seeing here and with Occult Crescent leading into it, you have to do it for a reason. It has to be interesting. There's no reason to bring it up again if it isn't going to be relevant for the story that you're telling. Otherwise, it gets a little bit bland. So that's just why I pull it in here, because I had been hoping for soul experimentation and for having that to be the driving force in the second arc of the game. And they've already started doing it with Dawn Trail. Who's to say that they can't go back and say, how can we expand on this stuff from ARR or even from Shadowbringers and learn a little bit more about it and make the fan base cry a little bit more about it? That is what happens inevitably when Shadowbringers gets referenced, right? So
I think, I think what happens often is that I'm restraining the part of myself that wants to make stuff up so that I can focus on like the other stuff. So like, I'm jealous of the people that are like, I'm doing it right now. Like,
so I should just keep DMing you whenever I have a brainwave in the middle of the night and go, hey, is this anything?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Crow and I were just joking about this too, like that. Like again, additive retcons. What would be more narrative satisfying? I mean, you had in the history of All Amigo, you know, the Mad King tried to get a one-up on the Fist of Rhalgr by saying, like, actually, we're going to worship what was it, Nafika, Nemea?
No, it's Nemea, yeah.
Getting my and mixed up in my brain meats. he's like, no, we're actually going to follow this god now, because if you look at like how the gods relate to each other, this is Master of Rhalgr, so I get to put you in your place again, right? Yeah. I was thinking, like, wouldn't it be funny if they just decided, actually, that's the god that Scala worshipped, and now he has a foundation to be like, actually, this was her land the entire time. I was down in the horror dungeon where I left my rival. We're not going to talk about that. But you would actually be able to expand on some of the stuff that they've said in the past by making up something new, and that's my favorite way to retcon things.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Rockle and I were joking about this before I was joking around. We've just gone through like 3 or 4 permutations.
Yeah. And just since we've been doing a lot of analogies recently to Moose is like a toilet for lore shit. And so you can just dump it all in there and flush it whenever you want.
I know this is a podcast. I hope my face is enough of a response. I don't. What the fuck am I supposed to say to that?
Whatever lore shit you want to throw out there, Moose accepts it. That is his function.
No, first of all, I'm rejecting this analogy for multiple reasons.
Don't worry, I won't put this part in the digest. All right, so the
we have to move on.
Yeah, we got through half. We're just
okay. Moose, let's move on. Yeah.
Amdapor.
Where I get with I'll actually keep going on the Karibu thing for one more minute. Where I get stuck is like as the nitty gritty, how do we make sense of what's already out there? Instead of thinking about like what's cool and what I would do, I'm stuck back on like, oh, they already said in this one place that it was from another plane. So how do we dismiss that? What's a fun way to dismiss that? Or, even no matter how the time oscillation works, it shouldn't allow you to see a window to the first to see an actual like first Sin Eater. So that's probably out. And then you got that thing in the Palace in the Dead where you can use like the Pomander and you can turn into a Karibu, but that Karibu doesn't look like this Karibu. So which one did they see? Which one's from the other plane? Like, and I start trying to work all that out. But meanwhile, there's another layer of my brain that's going. So I think what happened is Mhach was summoning Voidsent, and Voidsent look like demons, so they had holy horror designs from like real world mythology where the holy guardians are kind of scary, and they were like, great, let's use that for Amdapor's golems, and now you have like holy horrors versus demonic horrors, and we have like a really cool artistic motif here. And then a couple years later they decide we want like a light calamity where everything light is scary, we should have holy horrors, and they're like, shit. I'll just use them again. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
To your point there too, like imagery and art is an important catalyst for telling the story as well. So that's probably where a lot of the design ideas for these things start, is to get that across. And they do that very, very well, particularly when it comes to all of the city-states in the 5th Astral Era.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we have made it to the Encyclopedia Eorzea, Volume 1, which is where, for the first time, they take all of these little bits and pieces that they've been building and expanding and mutating and twisting for a couple of years, and they summarize it as one story, and they flesh it out. And the part that gets me is in the opening of it, they just casually drop, yeah, by the way, in the year 550, the 5th Astral Era, there were 12 cities, one for every god. Mm-hmm. Like, you have only ever talked about 3 before, and it's like, by the way, 12.
Oh, there was more. Yeah.
Isn't it also the case, because I was rereading this last week just as prep, don't they also start with, oh yeah, and this is when the 12 were created, and now there's a city-state for each god, because this is when they started.
They get very vague about like the pantheons. Like the pantheons kind of come and go, and it's kind of like the pantheon came together and then the pantheon separated. And then like, so if you go to 1.0 lore, the pantheon was never actually a pantheon until 233 when this Charlayan guy came around and he like took all the different calendars around Eorzea and all the different histories around Eorzea, and he was like, hey, let's build one thing together. And they gave this one guy credit for it, Lufon. And it turns out that this has been a thing in like every era. Lufon saw the Phantom Realm, I guess.
Oh.
Okay.
Gosh. I mean, they could just say that.
But-
I mean, that was the
So
point
they-
of the Phantom Realm, was just to just keep appearing and that's how we know
They-
the gods are real.
They tell you right in the book, there was one god for every city, and they tell you Amdapor was Nafika and Nim was Ocean, and they don't tell you Mhach was Rhalgr.
Mm-mm.
You might be tempted to think so. I mean, they're super into destruction.
Mhm.
That's one of the things where I get nervous about, like, what if we interpret it one way and it's another way? Like, what if pursuing maximum destruction for the sake of maximum destruction in terms of like Shatto was just, I mean, you worship Rhalgr, the destroyer. Maybe that's just what makes sense, is you research that. And I like try to account for that kind of stuff. But you might be tempted to think it's Rhalgr. They're super into destruction. They got statues of a dude pondering a purple orb. When the floods came, they tried to escape the flood by following a meteor. They invented the Levin steeds, which we associate with Rhalgr. And yet, there are 2 or 3 references to Nthal that I can't fully place or rule out in the vicinity of Mhach. And it's just kind of like, okay, is this kind of like a nod to the fact that it ended up coming from Ul'dah, and that's like the Nthal city? Like, is that just like a little homage, or should I be on the lookout for that this isn't Rhalgr?
Right.
All right, just to make sure, we're in Stormblood right now, right?
No, we're in
We
the
are in the
Warbook,
Encyclopedia Eorzea
Okay.
Volume
which
1.
came out. Yeah.
Okay.
We're in the Stormblood announcement.
Okay,
We're
got it.
having an argument about whether it's Ida or Ida's sister right now.
Okay, got it. I remember that very clearly, so we're good.
That was a lot of information.
If you were there, you were there.
I own lore books. I haven't read them.
900 pages.
As long as you own one.
I own
Yeah.
them. So, and I believe I've used the code for the
Purchasing
minion.
lore books brings more lore books.
Koji said the goal was for the lore book to be like an appliance. Every home just has one. Like you just have to have one for your home. Like, I know plenty of people who have a freezer in their basement that has like nothing in it and they never open it. Like, that can be your lore book.
You know,
I feel like that analogy is better suited to whenever Frosty has a question, I get a DM about it. I'm the freezer in the basement that just contains all of the lore, and every 6 months he opens it. He's like, "Hey,
I
tell
have
me
this."
one mystical thing." Got it, and then
You
like
know-
leaving again.
I just thought of a really great analogy that I relate to. Not this is much better than the last. Sometimes when I work in IT and people will come to me with problems, and I'm like, let me Google this real quick. All right, I have the answer for you now. Sometimes I come to M or Moose or whoever, and I ask you something. I'm sure you feel a similar way, or you're just like, let me just look it up real quick. I don't know why you're such an idiot, Frosty.
I remember where to find it.
I think
Not what it is, but I remember where to find it.
I'm the guy you're telling to restart your computer to, or restart your device. I get it now.
Okay, so please watch the cutscene again. That's like our
Yeah.
turn it off and turn it back on. Like, please turn the cutscene on again.
Yeah, okay. It makes sense to me now. Okay, I know where I stand. I have a high interest in technology, but don't understand it. That's where I am, but with lore. All right, so we're good. All right. Anyways, sorry, that was just something for me.
All right,
No,
I'll move out of the lore book so we can get to story.
Yeah, let's get into the lore books.
yeah.
And I will say, I do have like a handful of those types of books, but the one that I choose for my living room that's out there is a Pokemon book that is the anatomy of Pokemon. And it literally, you open it up, and it's like, here's a Pikachu, and here's all their organs and how they function. And it is
What?
great.
My poor child.
I would love, everybody should get one of these books because it is such an interesting book. There's nothing
I'll look
wrong
it up
with
right
it. It's
now.
like a science book for Pokemon. It's fine.
We need to move on.
But yeah, well, we move on.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the first lore book finally puts all of the pieces in order. It fleshes it out. It gives you structure. It gives you years. So actually, now we can actually, before we get into Occult Crescent, we can give you the rundown of the years that we have finally summed up with all of this content that we've done. the fifth astral era starts. They reinvent magic. They come out of the ice age. There's an age of prosperity, and it gives rise to this place where Amdapor is founded within the first 300 years of that timeline. It is the youngest, or the oldest city, the firstborn. By the year 500, Mhach and Nim have come about, and so Amdapor is known as the ancient city. Shatto invents black magic around 800. And so, as Em said, Amdapor is already a considerable power by this time. Mm-hmm. So we can speculate about why destruction was a priority for them, why power was a priority for them. And it probably is a little bit of everything, right? So we learn that Amdapor creates white magic shortly after, because within the first 100 years of Mhach inventing black magic, it starts taking out its neighbors. And Amdapor creates white magic to balance the scales. And by the year 1000, there's only 6 cities left, and the war hasn't started. The actual war that we're talking about hasn't started, and there's only 6 cities left.
So what was this called pre-war? Just
that was
human
just
nature,
geopolitics.
Yeah, okay. They absorbed each other.
Okay.
It's just basic human geostrategy, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Maybe it's only a war if the Asians are involved.
Well, it's also like if there's nothing left of the civilization, you typically don't write about it anyway, right? That's cultural history lost. So maybe we'll find out more about them in the future. I think that would be fun to expand on.
And
but
not even all of them were sacked.
Yeah, some of them just faded away.
Some of them faded away. Some of them were assimilated. Some of them were destroyed. Some of them were overthrown. You know, like they weren't all just sacked. So the real war starts 1300 years into the 13th century of the era, which I think means 1200 years into the era. And that's when you get the void magics. Mhach starts sending like demonic horrors after people now. Amdapor is carving their holy horror statues to fight them. Nim's getting taken out by a plague by 1500. 1510, Diabolus is summoned. And then after 300 years of war, it's just taken its toll on the land, and the floods have come. And this is a really cool throwback for the lore book, because the lore book actually remembered that when we got the Grand Companies, that it was said that the Grand Companies were first formed in the last calamity, so we should form them in this calamity. So it actually takes a couple paragraphs to talk about how the Grand Companies of the post-War of the Magi period were established. And I thought that was a really good thing that they just kind of remembered and put in there, because it really did make it feel like intended all along, fully integrated. And once again, it feels like the War of the Magi has been wrapped up.
But wait, there's more.
Okay. Okay. And
there's one tiny. Technically, there is one little bit more. Technically, we do get into Stormblood, and the fifth Astral Era storyline does continue on a little bit, and the place it happens might surprise you. Job lore.
Yep.
So they introduce Red Mage, and in classic consistency with the games before this, red magic is a mix of black and white magic. So they actually bring back the fifth Astral Era lore and reveal that when they followed that meteor away from the flood, they made it to Girabania. And they believed like Rhalgr sent that meteor that they followed. And Girabania actually has like little hints of Mhachi language around. Like Girabania is probably Mhachi language. And when they get there, they set aside their differences and they invent a type of magic that won't tax the land. And that's the beginning of red magic. And that storyline actually ends up to you finding the sealed tomb of Lilith, who lost her rod back in the Realm Reborn relic story.
I have beef with that specific incident because I asked Moose, and I get it. Moose had NDAs, respect their NDAs, but I caught on to that. I was like, there's a Lilith in the Red Mage quest. Is that the same Lilith that you get the rod for in the relic, in the Realm Reborn? And Moose was like, I don't know, maybe. But he had already known the answer, and he just didn't answer me. He did one of those like, I don't know, maybe it could be. And later on, the book
you didn't
dropped.
detect it, right? So
Right,
he adhered to his NDA beautifully.
Yeah, no,
Square
I
Enix
didn't.
legal,
I had
one
no
fear.
idea. I had no idea. I stepped away. I didn't keep pressing it, and then later on, I read the book, and it says right there, it's the same person. I'm like, he knew, and he knew.
When I was,
So
I'll tell you a story about like why I am so emotionally afraid of Square Enix legal.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I would go to cons, like a teenager. I would go to cons, and everybody would be selling Final Fantasy merch. Like everybody would, Moogle pins, Moogle posters, Chocobo posters, fan art. Everyone's selling Final Fantasy merch, and I'm like, oh, well, there's a difference between rules and rules enforcement. They're just not enforcing that rule, I guess. And then someone tried selling DVDs of all the cutscenes as a video game movie, and that shop got nuked from orbit in like a day. Like just vanished off the face of the planet. And I was like, oh, they know.
Yeah.
They know about your buttons. They know about your posters.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
You do not cross the line.
Yeah. Funny. I know M can talk about this a lot, but we won't. We've had a couple of conversations. Yeah, we won't do it. We won't do it though. Just the understanding and legalities of all of it. But anyways, yeah. You don't. I never test them. Never test
the fences. Just know your role. Stay in your lane.
You signed it. Yep. So
you sign a paper. You stay in your lane.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways,
it's very impressive NDA keeping. Every time I think Lilith Rod or Lilith at all, I remember that moment. That was very good NDA keeping.
the NDA rod.
Yeah.
That's what.
All right. So, sorry, I got lost a little bit. We're in Stormblood now, right?
Yeah, we're finishing
Okay.
Stormblood lores.
Okay.
The only further thing we learn in Stormblood about the war, as far as I know, is the Black Mage quest. You actually learn that Shatto was a hero, not Death's Handmaiden, not the Black Witch, not She-Devil. She invented that magic to stop a meteor, not summon one. She destroyed a meteor that was headed for her city.
Yep.
So earlier on, though, she summoned it just to do it, right? I thought that was
that's unreliable narrator.
Additive.
That's what Eorzeans believed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Additive retcon.
This is an additive retcon that they added.
Got it. Coming together.
They decided later that it would be cooler to do this other thing, and that it wouldn't contradict it if we said this other stuff. So that's a good writing. Additive retcon.
All right. So I'm down with it. And so that's all we learned in Stormblood, and then we're kind of.
And then there was Scala. It's just the.
You're right.
Showing it was a fifth astral city.
How did I skip Scala when you
made the joke
when you
earlier,
get out
and
into
your brain was like, "We're good." You mentioned it.
Yeah, the joke was good.
Checked it out. Checked it right off the list. Yeah, we do find the ruins of Scala when we get out to what is it, Loxel, the name. And we find out that city had actually fallen before the floods had even come.
Yeah, it was a pre-issue. I think it fell to the War of the Magi. Like it was a victim of the war.
If I remember right, if I remember right, it was the state of war that led to it not being able to hold its own.
It was also like a smaller city. There was no way Scala was going to be able to compete with the giants of Amdapor and Mhach, even before they were starting to get their arcane shit together, so to speak.
And in the things from Occult Crescent that expand on rather than just summarize this, that is one of the things that we got one new nod to.
Nice.
Okay. So just out of that curiosity, how much more are we learning through this whole process of multiple expansions before we hit Occult Crescent? Because I did put Occult Crescent within the title.
I can throw out there that in Endwalker we had Aloelo Island. And the ancestral home of the Plainsfolk and the birthplace of Arcanima. We learned that they actually left there and went to Nim, and then the floods came. And they were like, "No, we're going back."
Okay,
and that's pretty much.
And then there was a volcano.
We did it.
Yeah,
well,
which is good because you don't. If you're only summarizing the stuff that's brand new in Occult Crescent and speculating about where it could go, we don't need much time.
Okay,
that's kind of what makes Occult Crescent so interesting from a lore
Yeah,
perspective.
the impact
Because
hits so
we
much
can
in
get
the
into that now, right? Because
Yeah.
even when we were seeing screenshots and in the patch trailer for it, we were like, oh, that's Nemean architecture. Oh, that's Mhachi architecture. Oh, that's Amdapor architecture. And we recognized a lot of the enemy types from that. Hey, what's that new building? That's the scary part, is we know so much about this. And
We
then
figured
they put this new
immediately
thing
there's
in
something
there.
new. Yeah.
Because we have all of this context to the War of the Magi. So what's so interesting about Occult Crescent is the fact that we know so much about it. It's a snapshot out of time from the city-states. Because you notice a lot of the Nemean architecture, it's on the water. It's floating in the water. It's not floating in the sky, right? Couple of things. Where are the people? If this is a snapshot in time, what is the new architecture that we don't recognize? Is this one of the city-states? Is this something new? Is this related
I
to
can tell you about
this? Yeah, and it's like, is this
Yeah.
a Eureka situation? That's where Occult Crescent gets really interesting, because we recognize so much of it. The stuff that we didn't recognize, that stands out in such
just
stark
Slaps you in the
contrast.
face.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I
will
feel like
say-
they did. I feel like they did that on purpose, because the first
Yeah.
section of it is supposed to be your introduction, right? So I wasn't expecting that much new to be in the introduction. I was expecting it to lay the groundwork for introducing the expanded stuff later on, but they had that little foresight to go, actually, here's one thing.
One thing.
And that one thing immediately blew my mind.
Oh yeah. No, the one thing. This is the funny part. When I got into Occult Crescent, I want to say it was like February technically. So it wasn't even the instance, right? It was the live letters, and like Emma was saying, we saw the pictures, we saw the screenshots, and we were like, "Whoa, War of the Magi!" Like it was an instant. Like I'm pretty sure I had like several DMs screaming the word "Nim."
Lore chat
Like, it
was
was just-
going across.
yeah.
Like this
It was
group
just-
chat was yelling about it.
It was the immediate recognition was definitely the point. But the one thing that I thought was super funny that got me, I was actually working. I think it was during the second live letter that went live, and I was working. I stock at a grocery, so I'm sitting there. I'm stocking the food, right? I'm just putting the stuff up, and I'm listening to the live letter. And he goes into the instance, okay, and I'm sitting there doing my thing, and then I hear Tonberries Tears, and I shout so loud, and I forget I'm at work, okay? Because I'm like, because I'm just stocking the groceries, right? Listening to the live, and I hear that song, and I was like, no! And then I look, I was like, okay, no one saw me. Like, and then I like compose myself, and then I'm like, guys, they actually are referencing, because it was like instant, like music. The music references everything, and then it was just like each tune, it like one after the other in succession, and I'm just like, what? That's amazing. So I had already started like with the music alone, and I wanted to. I was like, I'm gonna make a video talking about all the different tunes and all, and it was just crazy. And that was just one part, mind you. Yeah, Em's talked about the architecture, right? And then there's the hints. There's so much just associated with these references that we already know. It's super cool.
Okay. So tell Frosty some stuff about Occult Crescent that kind of blends in and leads in, things that blew your mind in a way that you would tell a 3-year-old.
Right, telling Grandpa Frosty all about our favorite video game that we got for Christmas.
Yeah.
Show him
So
your Pokemons.
Yeah.
Most important thing.
Not the anatomy.
The most important thing. Okay, so I mean, first of all, if you have to, do you know the story of Dinotopia? Do you have the base reference?
No, not a
of the
single
story of
bit.
Dinotopia? Okay. So I will summarize it very quickly. I promise.
Okay.
These two people find a hidden island in the ocean that was undiscoverable. They weren't able to ever find that in the past. It was never, they couldn't find it because it was hidden. And then they crash land on it all of a sudden. And while they're walking on this island, they find dinosaurs. And then they find it. And the thing is, when they find the dinosaurs further on in the island, they find cities and people. And the cities and the people are using the dinosaurs, okay, as transportation. And they're like, hey, build a whole civilization on using the dinosaurs as a form of technology, hence Dinotopia. All right. So what
Okay.
I'm thinking, okay, this is where my theory is. This is correct theory, right?
Mhm.
All right. So this island, it's supposed to preserve things, right? And one of the things that I saw it preserved was dinosaurs. Okay?
Okay.
And I'm sitting there like, if the 5th Astral Era had dinosaurs and city-states and hidden island, and I'm just like, this is the moment where Square Enix can introduce a
Jurassic Park.
Dinotopia.
Wait, okay.
I mean, there's...
Is that what you want from the next expansion?
This is what I'm saying. I'm encouraging Square Enix to think about it. This is the perfect reference, right? Okay.
Okay.
But I promise, I'll segue this into the big mind-blowing discovery. And it comes off of what Em was saying, right?
Uh-huh.
We know the architecture. We know everything. That's why the stuff that's standing out, like the dinosaurs, like the stuff that stands out is really big to us because we've never seen this before. I didn't know there were dinosaurs in 5th Astral Era. Now I do. Now I never will. I'm going to keep talking about it, right? But what else was there? We saw the pyramid. We saw the citadels. We saw the Nimian architecture. There's this giant thing, and they call it the brazier. So it's supposed to be like, if I understand the field note that talks about it, it's supposed to be a giant like torch-esque thing. Like it's a big flame. Like they go up to the top of it and they set it on fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this thing is supposed to be honorary to Nthal, who they call God of the Forge.
God of the what?
Which is God of the Forge.
Forge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's the name. And so these are pieces, by the way. I'm giving it to you in pieces because this is how I received it as I played through it while I was getting my field notes. I learned about this brazier, giant flame tower thing.
Yeah.
And it's meant to honor Nthal, who, and by the way, Nthal is supposed to be the god of the dead, not god of the. This is the first time we've seen any reference to his mercantile state, or more so that than his underworld stuff, right? Because of twin deity and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the mind-blowing reveal, right? At the very, was it the last quest? Correct me if I'm wrong, or was it the second last quest? You do all the stuff, and then the way it works is that the archives apparently knows everything, but he can't tell you what it is until you find a thing associated with his memory, which is us, by the way. That when I was listening to him talk, I was like, oh, that's just a lore person. It's like, oh, we know everything. You just have to remind us what that thing is, and then all of a sudden it just comes back, and we're like, oh,
yeah, his memory is like locked away alongside his slumber, so you're like helping him remember what he's up to.
Mm-hmm. And that's how he's able to tell you about what's going on. So when you finally visit this place, you come down and you tell him about it and all that. You describe the area. They call it Karnak. And so I guess if we're counting it off of time, right? 2017 was Stormblood. Oh, it was 8 years ago. That's right. It was like yesterday. Stormblood celebrated 8 years. So 8 years ago, about 8 years ago, was the last time they named a city-state for the mages. About 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just finally dropped one for the first time ever. Literally like 2 weeks, like a month ago.
I can't wait until another decade passes and someone's like, oh yeah, you remember Dontro? That's like 10 years ago. That's kind of how I'm feeling right now.
We're going to get to that point.
Right?
Yeah, no, we're going to get to that point,
right.
And it's going to be so immense. Right.
And you'll still be here doing this.
I'll still be here for some reason doing this. I don't know.
Because it's great, and you love it.
Then Final Fantasy 18 online will be out. We'll all be hitting bees with sticks together.
Oh, not in 10 years. They might have given a trailer for 17 by then.
That's true.
Crud, man.
But yes, my most excited thing, like the mind-blowing thing, new city named after however many years and before they finally decided to start. Because again, we knew there was 12 cities, and then it reduced to 6, but we were stuck with the 3 for how long? And then all of a sudden we get Scala, then nothing, ever, and then now new city.
This has left me on edge.
Yeah,
it's like I have spent a lot of time joking like, just give me all 12. Just give me all 12. And I'm sitting here looking at this story, and I'm like, I bet they think they could give me 6.
Yeah, we're gonna be finished at 7. So
yeah,
oh yeah, is it that time? Yeah,
it might be.
Yeah.
They won't hear it, so it should be fine. Yeah.
We heard that whole conversation.
I'm so sorry.
okay.
Yeah, well,
Go on, Miss.
basically, that means my room reservation is
sorry.
starting to tickle out. So I
Okay.
gotta start
So you got
prepping that.
7 minutes, is what you're saying.
Yeah, basically. That was the
Okay.
warning. But
Okay. Well, and you could leave, and we could stay for a little bit longer and wrap some stuff up.
no.
I'll have to fix the cameras and stuff. Everybody just has to bear with me for a second while I do that. Let's give the floor to Crow a little bit here before he leaves.
I get
Just
you.
make sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, to answer your question, to provide you this mind-blowing experience of Occult Crescent, it's the literal fact that they're finally, after 8+ years. I mean, and then you could say, I don't even know if Scala counts. I'll give Scala a count because it was dropped as a city-state. But yeah, 8 years. It took them 8 years to finally give us another city-state name, okay? And we knew since 2016 there were 12. So why did it take 8 years?
They've learned their lesson.
And-
That's based. Because every time we made them say something too early, they felt boxed in by it later.
Very true. They're not trying to paint themselves in the corner. I respect that. But again, it's just that really neat aspect that we have this content that's dropped, and it's not. It's given us all these reveals based on stuff we know, right? We know the Nimians, we know the Amdapor, we know Mhach, but now we have this new stuff. And it's like, well, now I have to do everything possible to figure this stuff out. And I was in the instance for as long as I was able to before I couldn't play anymore. But yeah, I was grinding out as much as I could, and that's when I found out about Karnak. I think they're supposed to be like, they wear turbans and things like that. They get into this huge like civilization dump of this new nation we knew nothing about. And I'm like, it's like at this point, it's like we've been waiting so long. I was trying so hard to figure out as we went which one it would be, which nation it would be. But yeah, they worship Nthal apparently as god of the forge, which
What's the blue
is
one?
a different aspect. Yeah, dual aspect of the god, but the other aspect, not the one we were familiar with. And then that's one city, mind you. And
Okay.
I still haven't beat the full instance. I still haven't got all the field notes. I'm still combing my information out of the way.
Yeah.
I know, and M has more. M found out more, so I'm like, I know less of what's available. So, and that's just what I found out.
But
Was Karnak, the
Yeah.
city states, the dinosaurs.
so you think Karnak
That's-
is an island of people
But
who?
no, it's
Go ahead.
just Karnak's one of the city states.
Okay, a city-state that controls dinosaurs.
I want a city state that controls dinosaurs.
Okay.
That's why I brought it up. And I brought it up because the dinosaurs being a part of what we didn't know from the 5th Astral Era. Because that was not, as far as I know, that was not communicated, that they had dinosaurs. All I knew was the golems and the woods and stuff. But now we got like prehistoric trees.
Yeah.
We got prehistoric plants. We got prehistoric. I'm like, come on.
Prehistoric to
Right.
who?
Well, I mean, true. Eorzea's got dinosaurs anyway, so it doesn't even but
Yeah.
Tonberries over there like, this is just historically accurate.
Okay, you got to run, Crow.
yeah, I do gotta get finishing up.
Okay.
It was an absolute pleasure to be on the show. Thank you so much. And again, another shout out to LibertyCon for giving me the space to be able to present. I know it was very sudden, and they accommodated very well, and it was very kind of them to do so. So huge shout out to them. If you guys can just follow them or something, just be like, hey, LibertyCon, you're cool. You let us do MogTalk on your show, or on your space. So it was
Sounds
a
great.
really cool thing they did.
All
yeah,
right.
and it's always a pleasure to talk to y'all and rants about this because we went all over the place.
Yeah, this has been this is gonna be fun to try to like go back and reconcile all the thoughts into an organized manner in some way. So I'm gonna do my best.
I will leave you with that glorious endeavor. But yes, again, thank you so much for the opportunity. If you ever have any questions, feel free to ping me on Twitter. I mean, or on Blue Sky mainly on Blue Sky.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Crow, thank you.
For me.
Pleasure's always, man.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Crow.
you always have a
Enjoy
good
the
night.
rest of your convention.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep. See you later. So now we're good. We're back. We had crazy dinosaur theory, which I think Crow is just holding in the entire show and just waiting for those last couple of minutes to just spill it out. Let us all know there's a possibility, there's a dedicated technology dinosaur world out there that we might see. Okay. Now that we're past that crazy theory, I know there are more that exist inside.
What theory have you been holding in this whole time?
Me? Oh no,
Yeah.
no, M has one. I don't have any. The theory
I'm
that I have.
speculation.
Yeah. Let's dive into the ocean of speculation. Okay? And what do we have?
So, some additional context of new things that we've gotten from Occult Crescent. I have not had the joy of getting into Fork Tower yet. However, I have plenty of friends who were sending me field notes and screenshots of additional dialogue from inside the instance when they were progging through it. I loved getting prog updates by way of suddenly I would get 18 DMs from people in the same run who had all clicked on the same book and sent me the same screenshot. I very much appreciate my racing buddies.
Mm-hmm.
One of the final zones inside of the Forked Tower is a library with collapsed bookshelves that you can kind of read from. Moose, have you heard about any of this?
Heard about what part in particular?
Anything inside the Fork Tower.
I have heard the data that comes from inside the Fork Tower, but nothing about the content of the Fork Tower.
Okay. So most of this is data driven, right? Because a lot of the text, we've been talking a lot about linguistics, unintentionally, this episode. But the thing that strikes me about the text that we get is that it's all indecipherable. Like, you physically cannot comprehend it. It's not a Eorzean script. And some of the knowledge that we have around the 5th Astral Era, which is why I was kind of trying to set a little bit more of the tone there, is that's around the time towards the end of the 4th Era, start of the 5th, that we started getting common script for writing out Eorzean language, for what the game uses as the canonical script. So some of the dialogue that you get when you click on things and read through them in the Fork Tower say, yeah, you can't read this. This isn't a language that you recognize, which gives us a little bit more of a time frame. Some of what it tells you is that there is magic that is purposefully preventing you from reading this information, and then a bunch of arcane glyphs that we also don't understand that is of an undefined type of magic. So it could be white magic, it could be black magic, it could be red magic, it could be scholar stuff.
Green?
We simply don't know. Yeah, that's the thing, is I know a lot of people have been like, oh, I want green mages in FF14. I'm like, I don't have an opinion on that personally, but what I am very invested in is, why can't we read this? Is this a magical enchantment that's preventing us from doing that? And if so, how is it doing it if the letters become unintelligible? We're dealing with something entirely new there. Same thing with the archivist who can't remember things, and as you bring him data, it starts unlocking a bit more of his memory. There is a layer to everything that we've seen in Occult Crescent that does not want to be found, that does not want to be discovered. Even going there is kind of described as entering Bermuda's Triangle. It's the Shades Triangle, right? Something is being hidden here.
Triangles.
Yes.
We can only spend a little bit of time on it. I'm watching. We got a couple of minutes.
I said not to go off the deep end. For chat's context, when we start talking about triangles, it's usually when we start going off the deep end, because that's a Mahahi shape.
Yeah.
And we love talking about Mhach here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Moose, but like, my observation has been in the obfuscation. I don't know if I'm saying that.
No, I
word
feel like
right.
I feel like I'm channeling
Better
my
than I
inner.
can say it.
I feel like I'm channeling my inner Frosty with this reply, but what if he just, if he could make the other guy forget like all the stuff he knew that I don't know, like what if he just made me forget how to read?
Right, is that what the magic is doing? That's
Holy
scary.
crap! That's a really good inner Frosty! Wow!
But I responded exactly the same way I do to Frosty, which is in good faith. But that's a scary type of magic, right? Something that can alter memory. Like, not just can't comprehend something, but something that's altering memory. What else has there been a societal collectively forgetting or like being purposefully hidden in regards to this? And should we be pursuing this knowledge in case it comes up later? Because that's scary. And that's another recurring theme that we've been having in Dawntrail is like memory is part of what makes you a person. If you take that away, like the memories of people, does it even still exist, right? So I don't have like a set theory so much as terrifying speculation as to the implications of what we're messing with, which is usually how my speculation goes.
Okay. Hey, isn't no, never mind. I was gonna get into something. I was gonna look real stupid. I was gonna say something about making us forget things and the magic that was used to teleport us away back in a realm reborn, and I don't know. I don't know where I was going. I think I was going.
That's a good thought, Frosty.
Okay, thank you. All right.
That was a really intelligent thought. You're right, because that is part of the canonical lore as far as the world reset. Oh, there were heroes involved, and we can't remember who they are. A lot of that is to reintroduce the Warrior of Light from a gameplay perspective, right? But if they're bringing that back up, we're back to additive retconning. We are once again returning to that in terms of like the magical explanation for something.
Yeah. You never know when the retcons are going to hit when they're additive. They could hit any time about anything, and
maybe they already have.
Every time one hits, I'm like, "Oh, you son of a! That's so good. I hate it so much."
Okay, all right. So, we're in. It's so funny. Like, we worked all the way up for Occult Crescent, and it feels sort of like there's a lot of stuff that we kind of expected from it more than stuff that we didn't expect. Is that right? Or am I wrong on that?
I think the only thing I expected was an explanation for why all this shit's in the same place. And they have laid enough of a foundation to just basically go, yes, you've asked the right question. Good job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because again, this is like the early part of a story, right? It's like starting Shadowbringers and getting through maybe like 2 hours of quests and saying, okay, is this what you expected from the expansion? We're missing pieces of the story, but knowing that we're on the right track as far as figuring things out, this kind of sets us up to enjoy more of that, because the core of this question is, why is the 5th Astral Era here? Is this a recreation of these civilizations, or are these actual pieces of these civilizations taken out of time and combined here? You would think if it's the latter that we would see more of like the dishevelment in the environments. But time is also passing inside of Shade's Triangle. How is it all preserved this well? And where are the people if it is a snapshot in time or if it is a recreation? What is the intent behind that outside of just, hey, here's the buildings? Those are kind of the things that they want you to start speculating on.
Okay. And they've given you just enough hints to get started. Like what energies are coming off of what bricks, and it's shared with the fairy and the blah. You know, like they chose the name The Architect for a reason. And they want you thinking about, again, recreation versus preservation versus, you know, they've given you just enough pieces that you can start putting a couple where they go, but you can't see the picture that they create yet.
Okay.
And that's why the War of the Magi is such important context and why we spent so much time talking about it, because that's the time period, that's the context for not just these civilizations, but maybe also intent. If it's someone from this era who is like, oh, I can preserve it by recreating it somewhere, or maybe it was another like Ark situation, a failed attempt to save people and civilizations. But then why would they pick city-states that were at war with each other to do that?
For me, that's the whole fun of a show like this, is that any of the things that we said could end up being the thing that triggers you to recognize something when it comes up later, or it could be none of them at all.
Yep.
Okay. There could be a really cool reference that you're going to catch because you know stuff now. There could be a really cool piece of context that just makes more sense. You understand how it fits into the world better because of stuff we just went over. Or we could have just gone over all of that in spite of this content. And we're not going to know for a little bit.
Okay, so we're waiting a good bit to figure out more of this. All right.
What's
We
good
got a new
about
city-state name.
Yeah, this is one of those things where, like, confirmation of the right questions to ask is more than we had before. Because prior to Occult Crescent, it was like, oh, that's 5th Astral Era. And that was it. That was all we had. Now we kind of are getting into, okay, why are all of these things happening? Who is the architect? Is the architect maybe related to the archivist? Because we're referring to everyone in terms of titles. And historically, in Final Fantasy XIV, when we start doing that, we start getting into, like, really powerful people manipulating civilizations for the sake of their own gain. So is it another situation like that, because that's how we got Eureka? Or is this another city-state that maybe had also been secretly getting power in order to do their own thing, and just flew under the radar of preserved history in Eorzea? We simply don't know, but these are the questions that we're actually able to ask now, because that's where the content is leading us to be curious about it.
I can tell you a good bit about why. You know, it's because, that one guy wanted to see his friends again. That's it. That's, he wanted to kill everybody so he could put his friends back together. That's the whole story. That's why the war happened.
I'm being roasted for my enjoyment of Asians right now. For anyone who's lacking context, me famous for talking about Asians during Raid. Frosty had to get that dig in there.
If it makes you feel any better, when Frosty got around to asking me if I had any theories about what we were going to see in the next patches, the only thing I was going to reply was 4 words: weird Asian bullshit somehow.
We need to put that on a shirt for you, Moose.
Yeah. Then with a graphic on it, and then you'll have your graphic tee.
There you go.
Yes, there we go. My prediction: weird Asian bullshit somehow.
Put little moose antlers over it.
And then you just
There
have Emmett Selk just doing a little dance move or something in there.
That's me behind him, rapidly approaching.
Oh, Christ. Man, so just to make sure I'm here with everything, that I feel like I did we cover all the stuff that we wanted to cover about the lore of the War of the Magi and Occult Crescent, or is there more stuff to dive into here that I am missing?
I really think we go ahead if you can think of anything.
I'm gonna say I have some more surface level observations that I don't know if they're of any use, but most of that is just like enemy analysis in the context of what we talked about already.
Okay.
There's another city that might be blue. We don't know much about the blue. I think that's what I was interpreting. They gave a quick reference to how Scala might have something to do with curses, like cursing might have been part of their history, which is kind of interesting because, like, the Mad King cursed a guy and threw him into the ruins of Scala. So I mean, that's kind of funny, right? They were a curse society, and that's where you just happened to throw the guy you cursed. Like, irony.
Okay. So let me see if I can make sense out of a lot of this stuff. Okay. So back in the day, black magic was created, and then we had the one character that was not from Final Fantasy XI that casted a meteor because she wanted to stop a meteor. Is that right? Okay.
In retrospect, yes.
Okay. All right. Wanted to stop a meteor, and then there's another city-state named Amdapor, or
yeah, no, go on, keep going. I am the one who asked for this.
White magic came to stop the power of all the crazy black magic that was happening. It was a counter, right? Okay. All right. Rebalance. All right. And then
equilibrium.
There's lots of war happened, and then that was called the War of the Magi. Big flood came in, killed everybody, but they took a ship and they went off into the sky, right?
You're getting there. Yeah,
All
you're
right.
getting it.
All right, and we Diabolus was down there still, and then we fought him. And he was like, "Screw this!" He flew off as a bat, went to the ship. I'm guessing afterwards, yeah, he flew all the way up there, and then we had to deal with all that crap. And now that is all done, we decided, hey, let's go find this island that we couldn't find anymore. And for some reason, we were able to find it again, just like Dinotopia. They eventually found that island, and we went to it, but we haven't seen the dinosaur part yet. And now we're on the island, and we're exploring it, and maybe discovering a little bit more about stuff that we didn't know because we don't understand the languages, and there's a lot of things that were lost to history that we're trying to revitalize in some way. And this could be a point in time that just suddenly popped up, or it could be a recreation, and we're trying to make sense out of it so we can maybe know a little bit more of the history. But who knows? Maybe it is just a re-envision that was not remembered properly, and we have an altered version of what we're learning now, and it could be positively retconned.
My favorite part of your summary is that it's like the core concepts of what was introduced in 1.0 before it got expanded into all the cool stuff that made it popular to make Occult Crescent, and then right into Occult Crescent. Like you get the core parts that are really important. Yeah. Skip all the stuff they added to make it cool. Occult Crescent, like you did it.
Okay, good. Got it. All right.
You summarized the gist of it.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. There's a lot of names and stuff that I'm sure is commonplace for people, and it feels like it's commonplace, but for me, it's like an empty word. It's just, it exists. I know it's a word I don't understand. It's likely a name for somebody, and I'm trying to. Go ahead.
I'm going to do one more throwback. I skipped this earlier, but since we're talking about linguistics, there was one reference to the War of the Magi that I didn't bother bringing up, but I'll throw it in here because we are talking about linguistics. In Heavensward, the localization team threw a joke into the Great Gooball Library about the Amdapor Council getting together and trying to decide on the name for the successor spell to Curaga, because they have to come up with a name for Curaga. And they get into a debate about whether it should be called Curago, Curaza, Curaja, or Curagura. And the debate gets so heated that they abandon the suffix system entirely, and they will now be known as Cure 1, Cure 2, Cure 3. And this is like a kind of like a little nudge from the dev team that in Japanese, it's very easy to read a list of spells and know which one's which by the last symbol. And whether we should keep the cool names, because that's what they are in Japanese, or whether we should be able to look at the last digit and see exactly what we're doing very, very quickly and easily is more important, is more spiritually accurate, is a debate. And there are people who are very not happy that we have numbers instead of aga, aja.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
I thought it was very funny to blame that on Amdapor.
This was a big conversation point for Yoshida when he was talking about, ramping up all of his spells, yeah. And there was never a fire this high or something, and he was like, I don't really know what to do about it. But yeah, no, I think, man, this is a lot. I feel like we went really deep on this. But I don't know if you guys did, or if it's just my pure ignorance that made it feel deep.
I mean, there's always
stops.
Yeah, there's so much more that we could dive into at any specific given point in this. But as far as relevant information, this is what works for us, right? Because we didn't need to stop when we're talking about Void Scent and go into, it's actually the 13th when it was devoid of ether, and that's why we have this. And then there's a hierarchy system for Void Scent. That's not really relevant for this. Right. So at any given point in time, we could stop and spend 2 hours talking about just that topic, right?
Okay.
But for the War of the Magi, that really hit everything we could possibly think of as lore people. And the reason it has to be such a wide range is because any of it could come up at any given point in time in Occult Crescent. And that's what's so fun, because all of it is stuff that we're like, yeah, and then they didn't tell us more about it, so we have questions. Are they going to get answered? Who knows? We'd like for them to, but
I mean, is that
that's
kind of
up
how
to
you
this
guys
content.
feel? Like, you don't feel like you have a strong prediction on what the next one, like, we might learn from the next one? It could be literally anything. We have ambitions, you have hopes of what we might learn, but maybe not, like, a solid lead.
My perception of this content is that the mere fact that the War of the Magi is being addressed in this kind of content in this place means that there's still room to play with it and no plan for what to do. So anything could happen. That's why someone was like, hey, are you doing anything else with the War of the Magi? And they're like, no, we kind of did what we were going to do. Oh, great. Okay. I've got an idea for what I'm going to do with my War of the Magi in the open world content. Like, this is in a way, Eureka. Like, what was Eureka?
Mm-hmm.
Eureka, in a way, was kind of the
Eureka,
wastebasket of a bunch of the whole Eureka. Let's say the open world one.
Okay.
The open that was kind of the wastebasket of a lot of lore topics that weren't getting addressed, but were still very interesting. And they found a way to kind of pull those into one thing and tie them all together. And in some places, it created more questions we still don't have answers to, in fact, in some cases. But I think I assume that's what's happening here, is that there's still room to play with the War of the Magi, but there's no plans for what to do. And when you allow someone to pick up that content and do something with it, you could get anything. So that's literally my only prediction for this, is it could go anywhere.
Okay.
My expectation is like more concrete in terms of information I think we'll get. I can't tell you what it is, but like I want to learn more about these city-states. I expect that now that they've set us up with the first 3 from the 5th Astral Era that we're familiar with, and start leading into ones that we didn't know anything about, that we're going to get more of that. Retroactively learning more about the 5th Astral Era, and maybe also like the actual narrative of the Occult Crescent, because a big theme in Dawntrail has also been like the concept of preservation, right? What does it mean to preserve something? Is it taking it, the actual thing, out of time? Is it recreating it entirely faithfully? Both are circumstances that we've seen in Final Fantasy XIV in the past, because Amarot was a recreation and Eureka is a place out of time. Is this a third new thing? What kind of new magic are we going to be learning about? I've got more concrete of like, these are the things that we will learn. Can I tell you what they are or speculate on the specifics? I can't do that at this time, but like, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Same. I expect more cities and more magics, and I'm going to be greedy about it. I'm going to be really greedy about it. I'm going to say, like, they gave us a new city-state for the first time in years, and I'm so grateful for that one city. But I've been given an ilm, and I'm going to take a malm, because what I'm going to say is, we just covered 4 cities, the 3 we knew, and the 1 that we didn't. We just covered 4 cities in the first of 3 things, which means we should do 4 cities in the next one and 4 cities in the one after that, and then we got all 12.
Wait a minute. Is there going to be a third?
That's how math works.
Wait.
Is there going to be a third? I don't know.
Oh, there's just 2, I think.
There's only 2?
I think they've only confirmed 2. Let me check that real quick.
Oh no!
Yeah.
2 duties?
They could always do more.
They're gonna give us 6. They're gonna give us the 6 that survived. They're gonna tell us the other 6 don't matter. No.
Yeah, I think
so. We're expecting some updates in 7.4. We have a guaranteed new area in 7.5. They have not They have not used. Why?
This is what I get for sleeping through a live letter, so I can go to my eye doctor.
Well, they haven't revealed. That's the word I was looking for.
Okay.
They haven't revealed anything else. That doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, but based off of the content of the most recent live letter, we can expect at least 1 or 2 more of the larger instances. So even if we don't get a new area, maybe they do another Delubrum Regine thing.
So give me the 6 that maybe made it to the war, and then a memo, like a doc, like one of those docs on the floor.
The names,
right?
and that's it.
Yeah, just be in memory of.
You're right. All right.
Let me ask you this, Moose. What are you gonna do if they give you another goth city state that Mhach was like, oh yeah, we took a lot of artistic inspiration from them, and then they kind of just joined us? Yeah, there you
Identity
go.
crisis. It's just that's it.
I mean,
Ever
they
since
could-
Emmett Selk said he was the architect of all the empires, I'm like, could it be? Could it be like? Because they could look like anything they wanted. They could be anyone they wanted. Does he always look like him? Is there any chance that there was like a hot goth chick, Emmett Selk, on the Mhach Coven, right?
Yeah, okay. So, what if they just make the next expansion deeply into all of this, right? What if this is like the core of our next expansion?
The 5th Astral Era?
Yeah?
I am going to say perhaps my spiciest take here.
Sure.
My spiciest take on Final Fantasy XIV is that I don't think that there's enough content about the 5th Astral Era to give it its own expansion, and that's why we're getting it in exploratory content, and I love that. It's good that we get more content about these places, but it's the same thing I say about Mericidia. I don't know that that would make for a good full expansion. And that I know that's a hot take because a lot of people want a Mericidia expansion, but I have kind of the same feeling about that. Is it's like I would love to explore that in something like this instead. As far as like themes that are being built up narratively going into another expansion, a lot of what we're seeing in the Occult Crescent, I've said it a few times this episode, it's the same stuff that we're seeing in Dawn Trail. It's the idea of preservation. What does it mean for a civilization to still exist? Or is it already dead and you're just like reviving a corpse over and over again? We're getting into some of those like existential questions. I expect that to.
Okay. All right. Well, I think then we could wrap up the show. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing anything because I can't say 100%. Like, I'm going to listen to this episode in its entirety again. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything that you guys wanted to talk about or anything else on this topic, at least at this point in time. I'm sure there's stuff that you could talk about, but stuff that you're like, I'm going to die if I don't talk about it stuff. So
I really appreciate, like, on a spiritual level, that I could talk that much and you could say that you just want to make sure if I have anything else to say. I talked far too much already.
Well, I enjoy listening to it, right? And it's not like something that's I enjoy like a little bit, like a nice sweet treat, and if I have too much of it, I get sick. It's a nice filling digestion of stuff from you.
We did actually, I will say, Occult Crescent did give me the one answer from Dawn Trail that I was looking for.
Yeah.
Kendram really is basically 100 years old.
Yeah.
They actually put the dates around that. I was like, it doesn't make sense unless he's like over 100, and they gave the dates, and he is basically 100. So there you go. No longer a mystery. Drop the skincare routine, I guess.
Yeah. All right. So then I will wrap this up, guys. We'll finish off here. I just want to make sure we're at a good point to do that. And I'm sorry we haven't had a lore episode or a story episode in a while, but I am getting things moving again with MogTalk. We've had a lot of episodes over the last month and a half, 2 months now.
Just in time to decide you're rotating me out.
Yeah. Moose, you've been doing lore episodes with me for
my entire adult life.
Yeah, it's been a very long time. Back to when Ethis still played this game, was still here, with all the pyro episodes we had, all the stuff that we went through. We've had so many experiences with Moose on MogTalk. It's been fantastic. And Em, you've been fantastic being a part of this too, here and everything else, and like coming in and just giving this like, I don't know if like this kind of like I don't know if it sounds like a bright-eyed perspective to lore.
I'm not old and
dive.
jaded.
Yeah,
is what you're trying
exactly.
to say. Okay.
And it's wonderful and it's great because you know way more than I do about all of it, and you learned it so quickly in comparison. And so
A burden and a blessing.
yeah. And I don't have to say anything good about Crow. He's not here, so it's fine. No, and Crow's been fantastic to come on the show. I've loved. He's always so excited. Always
He's very deeply passionate.
So passionate, and I love it so much. And he's out doing, living the dream of a lore master, right? And going out and doing a lot of stuff professionally. I think with working at a con now, and he wanted to make time to come on the show, so it was great.
No, I've really enjoyed this specific dynamic because I do consider myself kind of the old and jaded one. I do. And like a lot of the stuff I know is a lot of the more deeper and older stuff. And that's like my realm. That's the stuff I know. And I think it's really great to talk to people who kind of just blasted through all that stuff and are really excited to devour all of the new stuff and talk about what all the new stuff is and what all the new stuff's going to bring and all the stuff that's happening right now and how great the stuff that's happening right now is. Because like I'm still back in like Stormblood somewhere. Like those were my golden years. And it's cool to hang out with people who like these are their golden years. This is the stuff they're so excited about because I cannot bring that passion to this topic. I can't. The passion that M brings to Dawn Trail stuff, like I can't bring that passion to this topic.
It'll make me cry.
And when you bring Crow into it, it's not just that Crow's excited about everything, which I love. He's excited in a way that's so selfless. Like it's not about he's excited for himself. Like he's excited for everyone to share this with everyone. And is so like sincere and authentic about the community aspect of it that I love this dynamic when we get together and do these things. Yeah. So whatever rotation we take, whoever comes out, whoever goes in, I will be happy to see what dynamic changes that brings to that, because I bet there are more great dynamics out there that we can find.
It could be that we just double up the lore episodes and start specializing the different people who are with lore and different categories of lore, and they come in for that exact category of the lore. Sure.
So Nancy
just showed up. Get Moose out of here.
Yeah, I was about to say, so Moose and I have to be on separate podcasts going forward because we have our own separate ASCII and math spreadsheets.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Oh, Christ. And this is just a general podcast, by the way, guys. This is not a lore podcast. There's some really great ones out there. This is teaching Frosty and the lore dummies like myself a bit about what's so wonderful out there with Final Fantasy XIV and just everything. And taking like a good perspective of like not being offended if Square Enix does one thing one way and another way. Just understanding game story and lore and talking about that in that process is also very interesting to me, right? It's not just we live in the story, we live in the process as well, if that makes any sense.
I can't even imagine that. My whole approach to this game is like, if something rubs me the wrong way, the first goal I have is to try to understand it and to try to understand what was intended by it so that I can figure out how to see it in a way that I like. Like, how can I get the most joy out of this thing I do for entertainment? I pay money to enjoy this. Like, I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
The fun thing about lore is like you're engaging with the story as a video game from a gameplay perspective, and you're also enjoying it as a piece of art, right? Engaging with lore analytically is much the same way. It's a puzzle. It's something you can tinker with. It's something that different people have different perspectives on, and there's different ways to put the pieces together. And sometimes we know what the final picture is going to be, and sometimes we're still missing a third of the puzzle pieces, and there's a giant hole in the middle that we're still trying to analyze. Like,
and then
talking about it is so much fun for that reason.
And then you just take a piece of cardboard, and then you just write the pieces and cut them out and put them in place, and you're like, this is probably what's missing, right?
For all the speculation I do, I am very like canon centric as far as the way that I go through things. I love coming up with like scientific explanations for like the physics of the universe, but I'm really just using real life words to explain like the extant thing that we see in the game. So it's just fun. Engaging with it as a group is always just such a very nice time.
I love it so much. And you guys, I want to make sure it's very clear. I love these shows. Even though I am not super knowledgeable, that's probably why I love them so much, right? Because I feel like I'm just learning and I'm getting to experience more story in a way that's I enjoy doing it, which is through conversation. I wouldn't be doing a podcast. I would have over 300 episodes of MogTalk talking about Final Fantasy XIV if I didn't enjoy talking to people, right? Especially when they're passionate. And you guys are definitely, you love it. You may not express it. Like, it might be more surface level passionate that you could see Moose hardened, old, jaded, but in his heart, very passionate about the story and lore. But guys, this has been fantastic. I'm so glad we got this together. And I do, again, want to do another one before the patch is released, where we focus on the Alliance and the main story. I wanted to do separate ones, but I don't know if we can fit both of those. Maybe we do one and then do one after the... I don't know. I have to figure it out. But I want one before the patch is released so we can have that theory crafting discussion before it gets out there.
You even played the first Alliance raid yet in Dawn Trail,
No.
Frosty MogTalk? Okay. So you and I need to do that, because I'll be damned if I miss you experiencing 11 for the first time.
Okay, that will be a goal. I will go and I will play through the Alliance, and then we will do a show on it to talk about what's going to come up next. But we also need to talk about the story, because this is the end of Dawn Trail's story. Is coming up in 7.3, and then they're going to move on, right? And so it would be very, very interesting to just talk about what might happen. And so I have to figure that out, but be ready for the ping, okay? That's all I'm saying. Be ready for the ping to come through.
I'm ready. I'm going to
Okay.
ping Frosty like 30 minutes after we stop this episode. Be like, all right, when? Now? It's now time?
Let's just do another MogTalk right now. Crow, get another room reserved right now. Let's just go. But anyways, guys, this has been fantastic. I've loved this so much, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Before we get out and I do all my closing stuff, I want to give you guys all the room to do all of your closing stuff. And so I'll start again with M. M, if you would like to say what you'd like to say, shout outs to whoever, where to find you, all those wonderful things, final words, whatever you'd like to say.
No, I feel like I'm the one who's talking too much. I mean, I'm assuming you're going to find me on MogTalk again sometime soon, based on that conversation.
Yeah.
But I am Emunarum on all platforms. I do cosplay, I talk about lore. I also go to conventions and run events there, Final Fantasy or otherwise. As you may have picked up on, I also love FF11 as much as I love FF14. And I don't know if y'all can believe it, but I have more thoughts about 11 than I do about 14. And that is a very scary fact to share with the world. There's a beast here waiting to be unleashed from a lore perspective.
Okay.
I guess I should plug my new stuff too. I recently started actually publishing my own writing on lore, so I'm not just guesting on things and tweeting into the ether. So only a few posts on there, but I have like 6 or 7 drafts, mostly in 14, 11, and some other Final Fantasy titles. It's purely just lore writing that I'm doing for myself now that I'm very excited about. It's forgive me, Frosty, because you won't know how to spell this. It's AnayaUnbound.com.
Send it all to me. Send all the links, all the socials. Make sure you send me a DM so I can put them on the video.
Of course.
Okay.
Yes. So, but if you want to see more lore stuff, more cosplay stuff, more general, I'm shouting into the ether about things that I love. You can find me at Emunarum, and I post all my links there as well. So thank you so much for having me and letting me go madcap on everything today.
Of course, you're always a blast. And the funny thing is, Em, you could talk about any topic in Final Fantasy XIV, which is pretty ridiculous because you do a lot of raiding, you do a lot of other things besides just lore and story. You're my utility guest.
I can do it all, baby.
Yeah. All right, Moose, your turn.
Okay, I mean, you can't find me anywhere right now. I'm in the middle of a move. I'm like moving right now. I unpacked my computer for this show. You can't find me anywhere right now. Maybe Discord if you're lucky. Hopefully, a couple months from now, you can find me everywhere again.
Okay.
But for now, I'm in the middle of something. You can't find me anywhere.
Okay. When you can be found, where can you be found?
There will be like a twitch.tv/onwell will come back active. Lucifer Loring Star Blue Sky will be more active probably. And then, hopefully MogTalk eventually at some point. I mean, I'm always honored to be here. I really love being here. The invites, again, I never stop feeling honored by the invites. And especially your skill for always putting me together with such great company, because I feel like my greatest strength is my greatest weakness. I can put together a PowerPoint of everything that happened back to 2013, but without other people, that's going to be all the show is. It's going to be me reading a list of everything that happened back to 2013, which is not a good show on its own. I need as much intervention as I can get.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you making me feel more important than I am by saying you were honored to be here. So thank you for that.
Dude, do you know how many people flame out at like 6 episodes?
Most. That
what number are you on?
But you see, here's the thing.
318.
318.
And I'm still enjoying these conversations. Like, there's no routine here. I still have a blast every time I come here at 318.
There's nobody better than Frosty at bringing together so many different parts of a game community, because they all have something deeply passionate to say.
Man, all right, so I've gone a little bit off of a tangent here, but the best thing that makes a guest on this show is that they want to be here 100%. Because if they want to be here, they will be excited to talk. They try to be, there to have the conversation and have fun. And that's all I want to do is be next. Like, him has socialized with me in person at Gateway Fate, and I'm literally not that much different in conversations and group settings. I still sit there and I still talk to people.
It's genuinely exactly the same. Paneling with Frosty at Gateway Fate, it literally feels like being on a MogTalk episode, and he makes it so effortless to just do the things that we do coming on to something like this. And I guess this is shout out to Gateway Fate. If you want to see me and Frosty do this in person when he's within punching distance for his terrible analogies, come to Gateway Fate in October. I won't actually hurt him, I promise. This is a Minecraft threat.
Yes.
But it is very much the same vibe as far as we just love talking about this game that we love, and we will yap about it for hours on end given every opportunity.
Yeah, I know we've been going on this closing for a while, but yeah, definitely check out Gateway Fate. Google it right now. And then I'll put links on the video too for people who want to see it, because I will be there, Em will be there, and we'll find out about the panels I'll be doing, I'm sure, shortly. But I'll be there to do some more panels, and I love doing it when I was out there. Em did some panels. Probably one of the most popular panels there was one Em did on Final Fantasy 11 and how it comes into Final Fantasy 14. So, and I was in that panel too, clicking a button to go to the next slide. So, I felt pretty good about that. So check out Gateway Fate. It is literally one of the only fan Final Fantasy 14 conventions out there, I think. I mean, there might be some get-togethers and stuff, but this is like a multiple-day convention over in St. Louis, which is pretty neat. So, anyways, that being said, MogTalk might be here next week, but I don't think it will be. I think that I will have to take a small break because there's going to be multiple things going on that day, and it might not make sense because then I won't be able to linger like we have today. And so maybe a show next week. Stay tuned. Follow MogTalk on Blue Sky. Follow MogTalk on the mogtalk.org website, which I have been posting on now. I post my show updates on it. It's amazing.
I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. I put digest up there now. I'm trying to keep it updated. So if you want to follow what MogTalk's doing, just go, and you're like, I don't do social media, go to the MogTalk website and you will find out what's happening and when we're going to do another podcast. And I even have it embedded on the MogTalk website. So if you might be watching this, if you're on the MogTalk website right now, who knows? So, guys, but the next month or so before the patch is released, I plan to have at least 3 to 4 shows. And those will be announced as we start to solidify the guests and everything else on that. You guys have been absolutely fantastic. I'm so much looking forward to doing more MogTalk here over the course of the coming years, now that things have stabilized a little bit for myself. And you know what? Until next time, be good, keep cool, and stay frosty. Bye, guys! You guys all have to say bye! I won't move until you say bye!
I have a push button. I can't even say bye at the same time.
Say bye!